October 10th. The day the Hidden Leaf Village lost its fourth Hokage. The day a boy was born with the weight of a monster on his soul. But what if that weight never existed? What if Minato Namikaze, in his final moments, chose a different path? What if the nine-tailed fox was never sealed inside Naruto Uzumaki? This isn't a story about unlimited chakra. This isn't a story about healing wounds in seconds or tapping into a rage that shakes mountains. This is a story about a boy who had nothing. No demon. No power. No safety net. Just a lonely child in a village that hated him for a crime he never committed, a hatred that, without the fox to blame, would fester even deeper and darker. Welcome to the story of Naruto Uzumaki, the weakest ninja in the world, who refused to die. Without Kurama sealed within him, Naruto's birth was simpler. Minato still died. Kushina still died. But the Reaper death seal was never used. The Nine Tails, in its rampage, was driven off by the third Hokage and the remaining forces of Konoha, not sealed, not contained, but wounded and vanished into the wilds. The beast that killed their Hokage was still out there. And the boy who survived? He became the scapegoat for a village's unprocessed grief. Caretaker, they say he wasn't supposed to live. That his mother was the last Uzumaki, and his father, well. Some bloodlines should end. In the original timeline, the third Hokage issued a decree forbidding anyone from speaking of Naruto's Jinchuriki status. But here, there was no secret to keep. The fox was gone. All that remained was a boy who looked too much like the fourth Hokage and too much like the outsider clan that brought destruction to their gates. Without the legal protection of being a weapon, Naruto was just an orphan. A reminder of failure. Academy student, did you see that? He can't even hit the outer ring. Academy student 2, my grandmother throws better than him, and she's dead. Without Kurama's chakra, Naruto's natural reserves were average. Below average, honestly. The Uzumaki bloodline gave him slightly more stamina than a normal child, but without the ocean of demonic energy fueling his growth, he couldn't spam shadow clones. He couldn't heal from training. He couldn't brute force his way through technique failure. When he tried the clone technique, he produced one sickly, pale imitation that dissolved in seconds. When he tried the transformation technique, his chakra control was so poor he turned into a distorted nightmare version of the third Hokage. And so, Naruto Uzumaki learned his first lesson: the world does not reward effort. Not when you're starting from nothing. But here's where our story diverges from tragedy into something else entirely. A child with infinite chakra learns to rely on that infinity. A child with nothing learns to count. To measure. To plan. Naruto couldn't afford to fail. Every technique he attempted drained his meager reserves. Every mistake cost him hours of recovery. So he stopped making mistakes. He studied. Not the flashy techniques that required massive chakra output, but the fundamentals. The boring, granular details that other students ignored because they could power through with raw talent. He learned that the clone technique failed because his chakra distribution was uneven. He learned that the transformation technique required precise ratios of physical energy to spiritual energy. He learned that every jutsu was, at its core, a mathematical equation. And Naruto? Naruto became very, very good at math. Naruto, if I can't sense chakra like a sensor type, I need to sense vibration. If I can't move faster than an enemy, I need to know where they're going to be before they do. The original Naruto solved problems by overwhelming them. This Naruto, he solved problems by understanding them. He couldn't create 1,000 clones to find an enemy, so he learned to read tracks. He couldn't heal from a kunai wound in minutes, so he learned where to stand so the kunai never hit him. He couldn't blast through walls with chakra, so he learned structural weak points, load-bearing angles, the exact amount of explosive tag needed to collapse a tunnel without burying himself. He became, without anyone noticing, a specialist in preparation. But preparation doesn't fill the loneliness. Naruto, observation number 47, people fear what they don't understand. I don't understand why they hate me. Therefore, they fear me. But I don't do anything scary. Conclusion, the fear isn't about me. It's about what I represent. If I can control what I represent. This is the birth of Dark Naruto. Not the angry, violent version from the original timeline's waterfall of truth. This is something colder. A Naruto who looked at the village's hatred and didn't scream back. A Naruto who looked at the village's hatred and analyzed it. He started wearing orange. Not because he liked it, but because he noticed that the color made people underestimate him. He started acting foolish, because he observed that foolishness made people drop their guard. He started shouting about Hokage dreams, because he realized that ambition, even annoying ambition, was less threatening than quiet competence. The mask of the idiot was constructed with surgical precision. Graduation day came. Naruto had failed the exam 3 times previously. Not because he couldn't perform the clone technique, but because his clones were still weak, 1 or 2 at most, fragile, useless for combat. But this time, he had prepared something different. Naruto Uzumaki Naruto performed the clone technique. Naruto, right. Here goes. Naruto formed the hand signs. Ram. Snake. Tiger. His chakra, carefully conserved, carefully measured, split not into a dozen weak copies, but into exactly 2. One stood to his left. One stood to his right. Both solid enough to pass inspection. Both maintaining the transformation for exactly 6 seconds before dissipating. It was the bare minimum. It was technically a pass. Naruto, you passed. You're a genin, Naruto. But Mizuki, in this timeline, had no secret mission to steal the scroll of sealing. Without the fox inside Naruto, there was no special scroll to bait him with. Mizuki simply hated Naruto for being Naruto. And so, instead of a grand chase and a lesson about the Hokage's love, Naruto's graduation night was quiet. Too quiet. He went home to his empty apartment. He sat on his floor. And he allowed himself, for exactly 30 seconds, to feel happy. Then he opened his notebook and began planning for team assignments. Team 7. The original timeline's most volatile combination. In that world, Naruto's infinite chakra and stubbornness balanced against Sasuke's genius and Sakura's. Well, Sakura was there too. But here, Naruto had no chakra to waste. No demon to heal his broken bones. No plot armor made of orange jumpsuits and talk no jutsu. He had to survive this team. And to survive, he needed to understand the other 2 better than they understood themselves. Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke. Last survivor of the Uchiha clan massacre. Trauma response, hypervigilance, emotional suppression, obsession with strength. Weakness, cannot tolerate being helped. Helping him triggers shame. Triggering shame triggers rage. Approach, request assistance, do not offer it. Allow him to feel superior through teaching. People teach what they value. If he teaches me, he invests in me. Investment creates attachment. Haruno Sakura. No clan techniques. Average chakra. High intelligence scores, undeveloped. Trauma response, fixation on unattainable goal to avoid confronting own inadequacy. Weakness, desperate for validation. Approach, validate specific skills. Do not compete for Sasuke's attention, become the audience she needs. An audience that understands her value becomes valuable to her. Hatake Kakashi. Copy ninja. Former ANBU. Reads pornography in public to encourage dismissal. Trauma response, emotional unavailability masked as laziness. Weakness, cannot resist a puzzle. Approach, become a puzzle. This Naruto didn't arrive late with a milkshake on his face. He arrived exactly on time, sat exactly where Kakashi could see him, and said exactly nothing until spoken to. Kakashi, you're quiet. Naruto, you said to introduce ourselves. I was waiting for my turn. Kakashi, oh. And what are your turns? Naruto, I like strategy. I dislike unnecessary movement. My goal is to understand how things work. My dream is to be useful. Not Hokage. Not yet. The Hokage claim was for the masses, for the villagers who needed a loud, harmless idiot to mock. But Kakashi wasn't the masses. Kakashi was a test. And Naruto had studied for this test. Kakashi, useful. That's a strange dream for a genin. Naruto, a tool that doesn't fit is thrown away. I don't want to be thrown away. The bell test. The original Naruto learned about teamwork by being tied to a post and fed by his sensei. This Naruto. He had read the academy records. He knew that Kakashi's previous team had failed. He knew that the test wasn't about stealing bells, it was about identifying the real objective. Sasuke, coward. He's running. Naruto wasn't running. He was setting up. In the original timeline, he used shadow clones to overwhelm. Here, he used the environment. He had arrived 2 hours early, he always arrived early, and had memorized the training grounds layout. He knew where the water source was. He knew which trees had the best climbing branches. He knew the exact angle of the sun at 9 a.m., which would reflect off Kakashi's forehead protector and temporarily blind his Sharingan-adjusted eye. He had prepared 20 traps. None lethal. All annoying. Kakashi, traps. Really? The traps weren't meant to win. They were meant to communicate. Every trap Kakashi disarmed told him something about the setter. This trap used water balloons, non-lethal, childish, but precisely weighted to burst on contact. The next trap was a snare made of ninja wire, positioned at exactly shinobi knee height, requiring knowledge of standard movement patterns. The next was a false trail leading to a pit covered with leaves, obvious, but the obviousness was the point. Kakashi wasn't fighting a child. He was reading a thesis. Kakashi, you're not trying to steal the bells. Naruto, no point. I'd lose. Kakashi, then why the traps? Naruto, to show you that I know I'm going to lose. But I can make losing expensive for you. Expensive enough that maybe, next time, you don't want to fight me. Kakashi's eye widened. This wasn't the loudmouth he expected. This was a child who understood deterrence theory. Who understood that strength wasn't about winning, it was about raising the cost of conflict beyond what the opponent was willing to pay. Kakashi, and if I decide the cost is worth paying? Naruto, Then I hope you enjoy the explosive tag I tied to your book while you were dodging the water balloons. Kakashi looked down. Tucked into his back pocket, his beloved Ika Paradise had a small paper tag attached. Not active. Not armed. But positioned exactly where he would find it. A message, I could have. I chose not to. Kakashi, Team 7 passes. But there was no celebration. Kakashi looked at this orange-wearing, grinning child and felt, for the first time in years, something he couldn't quite name. Not fear. Not affection. Recognition. He was looking at a version of himself. A child who had learned that the world was dangerous, and had decided to become dangerous in return, not through power, but through preparation. Kakashi, Naruto. Why do you want to be useful? Naruto, because useless things get thrown away, sensei. And I've been thrown away enough. The bell test ended. But the real test, of whether Kakashi could guide a child who had already taught himself that emotions were liabilities, was just beginning. The C-rank mission that should have been B-rank. The Demon of the Hidden Mist. In the original timeline, this was where Naruto first tapped into Kurama's chakra, where he learned about sacrifice from Haku, where he screamed his ninja way to a bleeding Zabuza. In this timeline, Naruto had no demon to tap. No infinite reserves to burn. He had a bridge builder, a drunk, and 2 demon brothers who could kill him without trying. He had never been more terrified. He had never been more awake. In the original story, Naruto froze, then acted recklessly. Here, he had prepared. He knew the terrain, they had walked this road for 2 days. He knew Tsunade's habits. He knew that Sasuke would prioritize protecting the client because Sasuke needed to prove his superiority through heroism. So Naruto didn't fight. He observed. Naruto, Sasuke's taijutsu is linear. Uchiha style emphasizes precision over improvisation. The demon brothers use chains, mid-range, predictable arcs. Sakura is protecting Tsunade, which means she's immobile. Kakashi is. Kakashi was reading his book, seemingly unconcerned. But Naruto noticed the slight tension in his shoulders. The way his eye tracked not the battle, but the trees beyond it. Naruto, he knows there's a second threat. He's waiting to see if we can handle the first. The fight ended. Sasuke won, barely. Naruto contributed nothing visible. But when Kakashi checked the perimeter later, he found 16 small markers, pebbles placed in specific positions, that mapped the exact approach vectors the demon brothers had used. Naruto had known they were coming 10 minutes before they attacked. He had said nothing because saying something would have revealed his preparation, and revealing preparation revealed capability. And revealing capability made you a target. Zabuza Momochi. Haku. In the original timeline, they were Naruto's first real enemies, and his first real friends outside Konoha. Here, the dynamic was different. Naruto couldn't afford friendship. He couldn't afford to see himself in Haku's devotion, because seeing himself in others created attachment, and attachment created vulnerability. But he also couldn't afford to underestimate them. Naruto, Zabuza's silent killing technique requires visual obstruction. The mist is chakra-based, water affinity, massive output. Counter, not fighting in the mist. Counter, he can generate mist anywhere near water. The bridge is surrounded by water. Therefore, the bridge is his terrain. Haku. Ice release. Kekkei Genkai. Speed focused, close range. The mirrors aren't solid ice, they're chakra constructs. Chakra constructs can be disrupted by, what? Opposing chakra nature. No, I don't have enough output. Physical impact. Maybe, but I can't generate enough force. The solution must be environmental. If I can't break the mirrors, I change what the mirrors reflect. This was Naruto's life. While Sasuke trained his Sharingan and Sakura studied medical theory, Naruto studied the enemy. He bought Tsunade drinks and listened to his stories about Gada's men. He walked the bridge at midnight and measured the wind. He collected samples of the mist when Zabuza first appeared and tested how long it took to dissipate in enclosed spaces. He was, in essence, becoming an intelligence operative. Not because he wanted to, but because it was the only path that didn't require power he didn't have. The original Naruto and Sasuke coordinated a frontal assault, using shadow clones and Sharingan to free Kakashi. This Naruto, he had already prepared. Zabuza, a smoke bomb? Pathetic. It wasn't a smoke bomb. It was a modified flash tag, low explosive, high magnesium content. Naruto had calculated the exact lumens needed to temporarily blind someone in mist conditions. Not enough to hurt Zabuza seriously. Enough to make him close his eyes for 0.3 seconds. In that 0.3 seconds, Sasuke, who Naruto had briefed with exactly 3 sentences that morning, threw a kunai not at Zabuza, but at the water prison's structural weak point. The technique collapsed. Kakashi was free. Kakashi, how did you know the prison would collapse from that angle? Naruto, water techniques follow fluid dynamics. The prison is a sphere. A sphere under pressure fails at the point of maximum curvature deviation. Basic geometry, sensei. Basic geometry. A 12-year-old had just explained fluid dynamics to a jonin in the middle of a life-or-death battle. And he had done it while moving to a pre-selected fallback position. The demonic mirroring ice crystals. In the original timeline, Naruto broke through with Kurama's chakra, his rage manifesting as physical power. Here, he had no rage to tap. Or rather, he had plenty of rage, but it was cold, not hot. It was the rage of a boy who had been ignored for years, and that rage didn't explode. It planned. Haku, please don't interfere. I don't want to kill you. Naruto, you won't. You can't. Haku, what? Naruto, your technique requires exactly 7 mirrors for complete coverage. You have 6. The 7th shattered when Sasuke's last fireball grazed it. You repaired it with chakra, but the refractive index is different now. I can see the seam. Haku froze. No one had ever analyzed his technique mid-combat. No one had ever looked at his beautiful, terrible ice and seen physics. Naruto, also, you're breathing heavier on the left side. Old injury? Or are you favoring that leg because of the cold? Either way, your next movement will be 0.4 seconds slower when you exit the 3rd mirror. Naruto threw a kunai. Not at Haku. At the 3rd mirror. At the exact spot where the refractive seam met the structural base. The kunai had an explosive tag, not powerful enough to destroy the mirror, but placed exactly where Haku's hand would be when he emerged. Haku emerged. The tag detonated. Not enough to kill. Enough to maim a hand. Haku screamed. The mirrors shattered. Naruto had won. Not with power. Not with demon chakra. With observation, preparation, and the willingness to maim a child who had shown him mercy. This was the darkness. This was what happened when you removed the safety net of infinite healing and infinite power. You didn't become heroic. You became efficient. Zabuza, you're just a kid. Naruto, kids die every day in your world, Zabuza-san. I'm just trying not to be one of them. The fight ended differently after that. Zabuza, seeing Haku's injury, fought with fury instead of precision. Kakashi, seeing Naruto's ruthlessness, fought with concern instead of confidence. And Gata's men, arriving at the worst possible moment, found a demon of the mist who no longer cared about his contract, and a genin who had already calculated exactly how many mercenaries the bridge's structural integrity could support before collapse. Naruto had placed explosive tags on the bridge's supports. Not to destroy it. Just, in case. He triggered them when Gata's army was in the center span. The bridge didn't fall. It swayed. It terrified. It made 80 mercenaries hesitate long enough for Zabuza to massacre them. The bridge was named the Great Naruto Bridge. But the man who named it didn't know that the boy he named it after had almost destroyed it to save himself. The Chunin exams. Where genin become Chunin, or corpses. In the original timeline, this was Naruto's stage, his fight with Kiba, his victory over Neji, his scream that destiny could be beaten with enough chakra and willpower. But here, Naruto had no chakra to spare. No willpower to waste on speeches. What he had was 3 months of preparation, a notebook full of observations on every participant, and a growing understanding that the exams weren't a test of strength. They were a test of survival. And survival was his specialty. The first test. In the original timeline, Naruto didn't answer a single question but passed through sheer refusal to quit. Here, Naruto had spent weeks studying cryptography, information theory, and the specific behavioral patterns of exam proctors. He knew Ibiki's reputation. The proctor of the first test was an interrogation specialist. The questions were designed to be unanswerable. The real test was information gathering under pressure. Naruto, the questions require Jonin-level knowledge. No genin could answer them legitimately. Therefore, the test isn't about the answers. It's about how we get the answers. Cheating is expected. But Ibiki said we get caught 3 times and we're out. So the test is, can we cheat without being caught? Naruto didn't need to cheat. He had prepared for this exact scenario. The questions, while difficult, were based on standard Jonin exam curricula. He had broken into the academy library, 3 times, each time leaving no trace, and memorized the advanced theoretical sections. He answered every question correctly, in handwriting that was deliberately messy to disguise the precision of his knowledge. When he finished, he looked around. Sasuke was using his Sharingan to copy a nearby candidate's hand movements. Sakura was answering legitimately, she had studied too. Ino was mind-walking. Shikamaru was sleeping, having already finished. Naruto handed in his paper and walked out. Ibiki watched him go. Ibiki, that one didn't cheat. He knew. But how does a genin know Jonin-level encryption theory? Ibiki made a note. A small note, in a file that would eventually reach the Hokage's desk. Uzumaki Naruto. Potential threat level, unknown. Observation required. The Forest of Death. 44 genin enter. Less than half will leave unmaimed. In the original timeline, Naruto stabbed his own hand to remove poison, summoned Gamabunta to fight Orochimaru, and generally behaved like a protagonist. Here, Naruto entered the forest with a backpack that weighed more than Sakura. It contained 3 days of rations, water purification tablets, 20 kunai, 10 shuriken, 5 smoke bombs, 3 flash tags, 2 miles of ninja wire, 100 meters of fishing line, 30 caltrops, a compact shovel, medical supplies, 3 changes of clothes, and a handwritten map of the forest's known predator territories. He had spent a week interviewing Chunin, who had previously taken the exam. He had bribed, with his meager savings, a forest of death maintenance worker for the latest trap layouts. Naruto, we need the Earth Scroll. Everyone has heaven. We avoid the center tower until day 3, that's when the desperate teams will be there, exhausted and injured. We stay near the eastern river. Water means fewer large predators, and the sound of the river masks our movement. Sasuke, since when are you the leader? Naruto, since I read the survival manual you didn't know existed, Sasuke. Trust me. Or don't. But I'm not dying in a forest because of your pride. Sasuke almost attacked him. Almost. But something in Naruto's voice, a flat certainty, a complete absence of bluster, made him hesitate. This wasn't the deadlass demanding attention. This was someone who had already mapped their funeral and decided to RSVP and know. Team 7 didn't fight a single battle for 2 days. Naruto heard teams moving before they heard themselves. He identified trap patterns by the way moss grew on certain trees. When they found a Heaven Scroll team, he didn't suggest attacking, he suggested trading information for safe passage. When they refused, he revealed that he knew their team composition, their chakra natures, and the fact that their water carrier had a limp. They traded the information. The information was, the location of a fresh water spring that Naruto had already poisoned with a mild laxative. Not lethal. Just incapacitating for 6 hours. The other team didn't know it was poisoned. They thought they had gotten a better deal. They spent day 2 in their camp, too sick to move. Orochimaru. The Snake Sannin. In the original timeline, he murdered the exam, terrified Team 7, and placed the curse mark on Sasuke. Here, the encounter was different, because Naruto had prepared for exactly this. Orochimaru, Konoha Genin. How delicious. Naruto, Orochimaru-sama. We weren't expecting a Sannin. But we were expecting someone. Orochimaru, you know me. Naruto, I know your chakra signature. I know your fighting style. I know you're here for the Uchiha. And I know you don't want to fight us here. Orochimaru, oh. And why is that? Naruto, because I triggered a flare 10 seconds ago. ANBU patrol route Fox, for is 90 seconds from here. You could kill us all in 30. But you'd have 70 seconds to escape with an injured team, and you don't know what other signals I've prepared. You don't know if I've already told them your exact location, your exact appearance, and the fact that you're missing your left pinky finger, a trait that would confirm your identity to anyone who knew you in the Third War. Orochimaru looked at his left hand. The pinky was indeed missing, lost in a fight with the third Hokage decades ago. It was a detail known to maybe 20 people alive. Orochimaru, how does a genin know that? Naruto, I read. I remember. And I prepare for the worst people in the world, because the worst people in the world have been preparing for me since before I was born. Orochimaru could have killed him. Should have killed him. But he was a scientist, and scientists are curious. This child, this weak, chakra poor child, had just bluffed a Sannin using pure information. The flare was real. The ANBU route was real. Everything else was calculated guesswork. Orochimaru, you interest me, little fox. What's your name? Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto. The boy who doesn't matter enough to kill. Orochimaru laughed. It was a genuine laugh. And then he did something unexpected, he left. He didn't place the curse mark. He didn't kill them. He simply vanished into the trees, leaving behind a single white snake that stared at Naruto with golden eyes. Sasuke, why did he leave? Naruto, because I convinced him that killing us was inefficient. And Orochimaru hates inefficiency more than he hates Konoha. But the truth was more complex. Orochimaru had seen something in Naruto's eyes, a flat, cold pragmatism that reminded him of himself. A child who had learned that the world was a laboratory, and people were experiments in survival. He would remember Uzumaki Naruto. And that memory would save Naruto's life, once. Exactly once. The preliminaries. Naruto vs. Kiba Inuzuka. In the original timeline, Naruto farted in Kiba's face, used a shadow clone feint, and won through unpredictability and Kurama-enhanced endurance. Here, the fight was different. Naruto couldn't outlast Kiba. The Inuzuka clan's taijutsu was ferocious, and Akamaru made it 2-on-1. One hit from Kiba would break bones that wouldn't heal in minutes. One bite from Akamaru would tear muscles that wouldn't regenerate. So Naruto didn't get hit. Kiba, I'm gonna crush you, dead last. Naruto, you've already lost, Kiba. Kiba, what? Naruto had been preparing for this fight since the exam registration. He had watched Kiba's match against the Rain Ninja. He had noted that Kiba always led with his left shoulder. He had observed that Akamaru responded to specific whistle commands that required Kiba's hands to be free. And he had noted that Kiba's enhanced sense of smell, his greatest asset, was also his greatest weakness. Naruto, capsaicin extract. Not enough to cause permanent damage. Enough to overload his olfactory senses for exactly 12 seconds. 12 seconds where he's blind, deaf to smell, and fighting on instinct. Kiba charged through the smoke, eyes watering, nose burning. He couldn't smell Naruto. He couldn't smell Akamaru's position. He was fighting blind in a way he had never experienced. Naruto didn't fight him. Naruto ran. But he ran in a pattern. A spiral. Leading Kiba around the arena, letting him exhaust himself, letting him make mistake after mistake. Every time Kiba lunged, Naruto was already moving to the spot Kiba's momentum would carry him past. It wasn't taijutsu. It was geometry. It was letting your enemy defeat himself. After 8 minutes, Kiba was gasping, bleeding from multiple small cuts where he had run into Naruto's pre-placed wire traps. Akamaru was whining, unable to help. And Naruto stood in the center of the arena, barely breathing hard, having thrown exactly 4 kunai and moved approximately 200 meters total. Kiba, how are you doing this? Naruto, because you fight with your heart, Kiba. I fight with my head. And my head told me you were going to swing left 3 minutes ago. Naruto helped Kiba up. The crowd was silent. This wasn't the explosive, emotional victory they expected from the loudmouth Uzumaki. This was clinical. Surgical. Almost cruel in its efficiency. Hayate Gecko, the proctor, looked disturbed. Hayate, winner. Uzumaki Naruto. In the stands, the Jonin sensei watched. Asuma ground out his cigarette. Kurenai's eyes were wide. And Kakashi. Kakashi was afraid. Not of Naruto's power. He had none. Kakashi was afraid of what Naruto represented, proof that the ninja world didn't need demons, didn't need bloodlines, didn't need infinite chakra. Proof that a child with nothing but time, observation, and the willingness to be cruel could defeat clan heirs. Proof that the weak, when organized, were the most dangerous thing in the world. The main event. Naruto vs Neji Hyuga. In the original timeline, this was destiny versus will, the hero overcoming the genius through sheer refusal to quit, powered by a fox's chakra. Here, it was something quieter. Something darker. Neji was the strongest genin in the exam. The Byakugan saw everything. The gentle fist shut down chakra points. In a straight fight, Naruto would be dead in seconds. So Naruto didn't plan a straight fight. Neji, a dropout against a genius. The outcome is determined by birth. Naruto, you think so, Neji? Let me tell you about birth. I was born with no clan, no bloodline, no talent. You were born with the greatest eyes in the world. And yet, you're the one who's afraid. Neji, afraid? Of you? Naruto, because you know, deep down, that your eyes can't see everything. They can't see what I'm going to do next. Because even I don't know what I'm going to do next. I've prepared 47 different opening moves. I chose one at random 30 seconds ago. Your Byakugan sees my chakra. But can it see my dice? Neji activated his Byakugan. He saw Naruto's chakra network, small, weak, barely Chunin level. He saw no anomalies. No hidden power. Just a boy with below-average reserves and above-average nerve. The fight began. Naruto didn't charge. He didn't make clones. He threw a single kunai, not at Neji, but at the stadium floor. It hit a specific tile. The tile, which Naruto had loosened the night before during his practice session, shifted. Neji, standing on perfect balance, felt the minute instability. He adjusted automatically. That adjustment was what Naruto wanted. He threw a second kunai. Neji dodged easily. The kunai hit a second tile. Another shift. Neji adjusted again. A third kunai. A fourth. Each one forcing Neji to move, to adjust, to compensate. The crowd thought Naruto was missing. They were wrong. He was mapping. Naruto, the gentle fist requires precise stance. Root in the earth. Chakra flowing through the feet. But if the earth is unstable. The fifth kunai hit a water pipe that Naruto had identified during his pre-fight inspection. A small spray of water wet the arena floor. Neji's foot slipped, just a millimeter. A millimeter was enough. Naruto, who had been waiting for exactly this, threw not a kunai but a smoke bomb. Not at Neji, at the wet floor. The smoke mixed with water vapor, creating a dense, reflective fog that scattered light. The Byakugan saw chakra. It didn't see light refraction. Neji's vision was perfect in almost all ways. But the scattered light created phantom images, false chakra signatures reflected in the mist. For 0.7 seconds, Neji saw 3 Narutos instead of 1. In that 0.7 seconds, the real Naruto, who had memorized the arena's layout in darkness, closed the distance along a path that avoided all of Neji's likely defensive positions. He didn't try to strike Neji's chakra points. He knew he couldn't. Instead, he struck Neji's knee, a basic, brutal, non-gentle fist attack, with a kunai handle wrapped in cloth to muffle the sound. Neji's knee buckled. Not broken. But compromised. The gentle fist stance requires both legs. Neji now had one. Neji, what are you? Naruto, I'm the guy who spent 3 weeks learning the architectural plans of this stadium, Niji. I'm the guy who bribed a maintenance worker to loosen those tiles. I'm the guy who figured out that your Byakugan has a 0.3-second processing delay when light refracts through water vapor. I'm not stronger than you. I'm not faster. I'm just more prepared. Niji tried to fight on. But a compromised stance against an opponent who knew exactly where to step to avoid his range. It was hopeless. Not because Naruto was better. Because Naruto had made the arena his weapon, his ally, his technique. After 11 minutes of cat and mouse, Niji collapsed from exhaustion. Naruto stood over him, bleeding from a dozen gentle fist strikes that had grazed him, his left arm numb, his chakra network partially shut down. But he was standing. And Niji wasn't. Naruto, destiny is a cage, Niji. But cages have doors. You just have to find the key. I found mine in a maintenance closet at 3 a.m. The crowd erupted. But it wasn't the roar of inspiration. It was confusion. Uncertainty. They had watched a genius fall to a nobody, not through heart or spirit, but through preparation. Through sabotage. Through what looked, to the untrained, like cheating. Hayashi Hyuga, watching from the stands, felt his blood run cold. Not because Naruto had won. But because Naruto had won by understanding the Byakugan's weakness better than the Hyuga clan did. And in the Kage box, the third Hokage, who had been keeping a careful eye on this particular genin, made a decision. Naruto Uzumaki would be promoted. And then he would be watched. Very, very closely. The Konoha Crush. In the original timeline, Naruto was on the ground floor, fighting Gaara, summoning Gamabunta, tapping into Kurama's chakra to save Sasuke and prove his ninja way. Here, Naruto was in the stands. He had no summons. He had no demon to lend him power. What he had was a perfect view of the battlefield, a backpack full of tools, and the certain knowledge that he was about to watch his village burn unless he did something very, very smart. Naruto, we need to evacuate the civilians. The Jonin will handle the summonings. We handle the panic. Shikamaru, since when are you in charge? Naruto, since I have a plan and you don't. Shino, your bugs can sense chakra. Guide people away from the densest concentrations. Shikamaru, your shadow possession can hold doors open and stop stampedes. I'll handle the Oto Nin. Shino, there are at least 20 Oto Nin in this section alone. Naruto, I know. I counted them during the matches. I know their positions, their weapons, and the fact that they all wear the same forehead protector, which means they're not worried about being identified. Which means they're expendable. Expendable soldiers don't take risks. They follow orders. Naruto had spent the entire month of the exam finals watching. Not just the fights. The crowd. The movements. The patterns. He had noticed that certain spectators never cheered, never moved, always sat near exits. He had memorized their faces. And now, as chaos erupted, he knew exactly where the enemy was. Otionan, a genin. Go home, kid. Naruto, this scroll contains the location of every Oto operative in the stadium. I compiled it during the month break. I also know that your mission is to cause panic, not fight. Because Oto doesn't have the numbers to fight Konoha head-on. You're a distraction. Otionan, how? Naruto, your leader is Orochimaru. Orochimaru is fighting the Hokage on the roof. He doesn't care if you live or die. But I care if these civilians live or die. So here's my offer, leave now, through the east exit where I've disabled the barrier traps, and I don't set off the explosive tags I've placed in the structural weak points of this corridor. The Outthinks looked at each other. They were Chunin level, experienced, ruthless. But they were also logical. And Naruto's logic was impeccable. Outthinks leader, why would you let us go? Naruto, because killing you would cost me time, injuries, and chakra I don't have. Because dead Outthinks don't give information. And because, honestly, you're not worth the paperwork. They left. Not because they were cowards. Because Naruto had made the cost of fighting higher than the cost of retreating. This was his way. Not the will of fire. The arithmetic of survival. On the roof, the third Hokage was dying. In the original timeline, he used the Reaper Death Seal to take Orochimaru's arms. Here, he didn't have the same desperation. Orochimaru wasn't winning as decisively, because the invasion was less coordinated. The Oto forces were retreating in sections, confused by conflicting orders that Naruto had forged and spread using captured radio equipment. But the third was still old. Still tired. Still facing a student who had surpassed him in raw power. Naruto, Hokage-sama. The east wing is clear. The civilians are in the shelters. The Oto forces are retreating through the forest. I've left a trail leading them into the Nara clan's deer preserve. They'll be contained by morning. Third Hokage, Naruto. Orochimaru, ah, the little fox. You came to watch me kill your Hokage? Naruto, I came to remind you that you have 70 seconds to escape before the ANBU reinforcements arrive. 70 seconds to kill the Hokage, escape the barrier, and avoid fighting me, Kakashi-sensei, and Jiraiya of the Sannin, who I signaled 30 seconds ago. Orochimaru, you didn't signal anyone. Naruto, I did. You just didn't see it because you were focused on the Hokage. That's your weakness, Orochimaru-sama. You focus on the powerful and ignore the weak. But the weak are the ones who set the traps. Orochimaru looked at the flare in Naruto's hand. Then he looked at the third Hokage, who was smiling despite his wounds. Third Hokage, you taught him well, Minato. Even from beyond the grave. Orochimaru, this isn't over. Naruto, it never is. But today, you lose. Orochimaru fled. Not because of Naruto's flare, there was no Jiraiya coming. The flare was a bluff. But Orochimaru couldn't take the risk, not when his forces were in disarray, not when this child had already outmaneuvered him twice. The third Hokage died that day. But he died with his village intact. And as he passed, he whispered to Naruto. Third Hokage, you could have been Hokage, Naruto. In a different life. Naruto, I don't want to be Hokage, old man. I just want to matter enough that people stop trying to kill me. Third Hokage, that's the most honest reason I've ever heard. The third Hokage's funeral was the largest in Konoha history. Naruto stood in the back, wearing black for the first time, not because he mourned, though he did, but because black made him harder to see. Harder to target. In the crowd, Danzo watched him. And made a note. Jiraiya of the Sannin. The Toad Sage. Naruto's godfather, though neither of them knew it yet. In the original timeline, this journey was about learning the Rasengan, about bonding with Jiraiya, about tapping into Kurama's chakra for the first time in a controlled way. Here, it was about something else entirely. It was about learning that even the strongest ninja had weaknesses. And that poison, informational, chemical, or emotional, was the great equalizer. Jiraiya, kid, you don't train like a normal genin. You don't play like a normal genin. Heck, you don't even breathe like a normal genin. What's your deal? Naruto, I'm weak, Erosenin. Weak people develop habits. Strong people develop power. Jiraiya, weak? You took down a Hyuga prodigy with a maintenance closet. Naruto, and if Neji had fought me in an open field, with no preparation time, I would be dead. My victory was conditional. Conditional victories aren't strength. They're luck dressed in strategy. Jiraiya, that's a hard way to live, kid. Naruto, it's the only way I've got. Jiraiya saw something in this child that disturbed him. Not evil. Not cruelty. Just a complete absence of faith. Naruto didn't believe in his own power because he had none. He didn't believe in his teachers because they had failed to protect his parents. He didn't believe in the will of fire because fire had never warmed him. What Naruto believed in was preparation. And Jiraiya decided that if he couldn't teach this child to believe, he could at least teach him to prepare better. The Rasengan. A technique that requires no hand signs, no chakra nature, just raw control and massive chakra output. In the original timeline, Naruto used shadow clones to bypass the control requirement, letting the clones provide the shaping while he provided the power. Here, Naruto had no power to provide. His chakra reserves were too small. One Rasengan would leave him unconscious. So he didn't learn the Rasengan. He learned something else. Jiraiya, kid, the Rasengan is your birthright. Your father invented it. Naruto, my father is dead. And I don't have his chakra. What I have is his intelligence, maybe. So teach me something that uses intelligence, not chakra. Jiraiya, like what? Naruto, poison. Not killing poison. Disabling poison. The kind that takes a target's strength without taking their life. The kind that lets the weak defeat the strong. Jiraiya stared at the vial. Then he laughed. A real, deep laugh. Jiraiya, you want to learn senjutsu? No, wait, you want to learn medicine. You're a 12-year-old asking a Sannin to teach you how to drug people. Naruto, I'm a 12-year-old who knows that the strongest ninja in the world can still die from a bad bowl of ramen. Power is a target, Erosenin. Invisibility is survival. And the best invisibility is being too weak to matter. Jiraiya taught him. Not poison, Jiraiya wasn't a poison user. But he taught Naruto about chakra flow, about the body's tenketsu, about how even the smallest amount of chakra applied at the right point could disrupt a giant's balance. He taught him the basics of the Rasengan not so Naruto could use it, but so Naruto could understand how to disrupt it. And he taught him about Tsunade. Her strengths. Her weaknesses. Her fears. Tsunade Senju. The legendary sucker. In the original timeline, Naruto won her over with guts and determination, promising to be Hokage, wearing her grandfather's necklace. Here, their meeting was different. Tsunade looked at this thin, pale child in orange and saw something she recognized, trauma, dressed in bravado. Tsunade, Jiraiya says you want to be Hokage. Naruto, Jiraiya is wrong. I don't want to be Hokage. Tsunade, then what do you want? Naruto, I want to live long enough to see if this village is worth saving. And I want the medical knowledge to ensure that decision isn't made for me by someone stronger. Tsunade put down her drink. This child wasn't shouting about dreams. He was negotiating for survival skills. Tsunade, You think I'm going to teach you medical ninjutsu because you're pathetic? Naruto, no. I think you're going to teach me because you lost 2 people you loved, and you don't want to lose a third. Even if that third is just a weak genin who reminds you that strength isn't enough. The room went silent. Tsunade's hands trembled. Nawaki. Dan. The names hung in the air. Tsunade, you don't get to use them. Naruto, I'm not using them, Tsunade-sama. I'm offering them. My weakness for your knowledge. My survival for your redemption. It's a trade. Not a theft. Tsunade taught him. Not everything. But the fundamentals. Chakra scalpel. Basic healing. Poison identification. How to mend a broken bone, how to restart a heart, how to recognize the symptoms of a dozen different toxins. And in exchange, Naruto gave her something she didn't know she needed, a student who didn't look up to her as a legend, but saw her as a person. A broken, grieving person who still had something to give. It happened differently here. Without Naruto's Rasengan, the fight against Kabuto was harder. But Naruto had prepared. He had spent the journey learning Kabuto's habits from Jiraiya's stories. He knew Kabuto was a medic nin first, a fighter second. He knew that Kabuto's chakra scalpels required precise hand positioning. So Naruto fought him with traps. Explosive tags hidden in medical supplies. A smoke bomb laced with a compound that disrupted fine motor control. A genjutsu, not cast by Naruto, but triggered by a seal he had bought from a traveling merchant, that created a momentary visual distortion. Kabuto, for all his skill, was fighting an opponent who had turned the battlefield into a hospital room. Every technique he tried was countered by environmental preparation. Every advantage he had was negated by a trap set hours ago. Kabuto, what kind of ninja are you? Naruto, the kind that knows you're about to try a substitution jutsu. Naruto, the kind that knows you're about to try a substitution jutsu. The kind that knows your substitute is hidden in your left sleeve. The kind that put a paralytic seal on that sleeve 10 minutes ago. Kabuto tried the substitution. His left arm went numb. He stared at Naruto in horror. Kabuto, you're not a ninja. You're a monster. Naruto, monsters have power, Kabuto-san. I'm just, thorough. Tsunade became the 5th Hokage. Naruto returned to Konoha with new scars, new knowledge, and a reputation that was beginning to shift. He wasn't the dead last anymore. He was the genin who had outsmarted a Sannin's apprentice. Who had helped retrieve a legendary medic. Who had, in whispers among the Chunin, done things that didn't feel like ninja combat at all. They called him the Fox. Not because of the demon. Because of the way he hunted. Patient. Quiet. And always 3 moves ahead. Sasuke Uchiha. In the original timeline, Orochimaru gave him the curse mark in the Forest of Death, and the mark festered, driving him to leave Konoha, driving him to power at any cost. Here, there was no curse mark. But Sasuke still left. Because Sasuke didn't need a curse to feel cursed. He just needed to look at Naruto and see everything he wasn't. Sasuke, you're not my friend, Naruto. You're my mirror. Every time I look at you, I see what weakness looks like when it wins. And I hate it. Naruto, I know. I've always known. That's why I let you win our competitions, Sasuke. Not because I couldn't beat you. Because beating you would make you leave faster. Sasuke, what? Naruto, you're not the only one who can read people, Sasuke. I know you're leaving tonight. I know you're going to Orochimaru. I know you think he can give you the power to kill Itachi. And I know I can't stop you with strength. Naruto stepped closer. For the first time, the mask was completely gone. No orange clown. No loudmouth. Just a boy with dark blue eyes and a mind that had calculated every possible outcome. Naruto, but I can stop you with information. Itachi didn't massacre the Uchiha clan alone, Sasuke. He had help. He had orders. And Orochimaru? He was there that night. Not participating. Watching. Taking samples. Sasuke, you're lying. Naruto, I don't lie about important things. I read the third Hokage's sealed records. I broke into the ANBU archives. I found Itachi's mission logs. Orochimaru has been studying Uchiha DNA for years. He wants your eyes, Sasuke. Not your loyalty. Not your strength. Your eyes. And when he has them, he'll throw the rest of you away. Sasuke's Sharingan activated. 1 Tomo. 2. He wanted to see a lie. He wanted to see fear. But Naruto's chakra was steady. His heartbeat was calm. His pupils didn't dilate. Sasuke, why? Why tell me this? Naruto, because you're the closest thing I have to a brother. And because I know that even with this information, you're still going to leave. Because you're not chasing power, Sasuke. You're chasing death. And I can't save someone who wants to die. Sasuke left that night. But he didn't go to Orochimaru. Not immediately. He went to the Uchiha compound and sat in the ruins for 3 days, thinking. When he finally did leave, it wasn't through the main gate. It was through the sewers, a route Naruto had shown him once, casually, as if it were nothing. Naruto had known he would leave. And he had made sure Sasuke at least had a safe path out. The Sasuke retrieval mission. In the original timeline, Naruto fought desperately, tapped into Kurama's chakra, and ultimately failed to bring Sasuke back, ending in a valley of tears and broken bonds. Here, the mission was different. Shikamaru led, as the only Chunin. Naruto, Neji, Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru. But Naruto didn't fight with his fists. He fought with his plans. Naruto, the barrier is sound-based. It responds to chakra signatures. We can't break it, but we can trick it. Shikamaru, how? Naruto, these contain recorded chakra patterns. I collected them from the Forest of Death, Otonin we fought. The barrier is designed to recognize Oto chakra. These scrolls mimic that frequency. Shikamaru, you kept chakra samples from the exams? Naruto, I keep everything, Nara-san. You never know when garbage becomes gold. They bypassed the barrier. The Sound Four, expecting a frontal assault, were caught from behind. The fights were still brutal, Choji vs Jirobo, Neji vs Kadamaru, Kiba vs Sakan/Yukon. But Naruto didn't participate directly. He coordinated. He healed. He set traps for retreating enemies. He made sure that when Kiba was poisoned, the antidote was already prepared. When Neji was impaled by Kadamaru's arrows, Naruto was there with a chakra scalpel and a tourniquet before the second arrow landed. He was, in essence, the team's support system. The brain and the medic, not the fist. The final confrontation. Sasuke, exhausted from fighting the Sound Four. Naruto, exhausted from keeping the team alive. They stood at the Valley of the End, where Hashirama and Madara had once fought. Sasuke, you came alone. Naruto, you knew I would. Sasuke, to bring me back. To drag me to Konoha like a prisoner. Naruto, no. I came to give you a choice. Naruto reached into his pack. He pulled out a folder. Thick. Heavy. He threw it to Sasuke. Naruto, that's everything I know about Itachi. His mission. His orders. The truth about the Uchiha coup. The truth about Danzo. The truth about Root. If you go to Orochimaru, you'll get power. But you'll never get answers. If you come back to Konoha, I'll help you find the truth. Even if it destroys the village. Sasuke, you'd betray Konoha? For me. Naruto, I'd betray the world for you, Sasuke. Because you're the only person who ever looked at me and saw something other than a demon or a joke. Even if what you saw was weakness, at least you saw me. Sasuke opened the folder. He read. The Sharingan spun, not with rage, but with dawning, terrible understanding. Itachi's mission. The Hokage's complicity. Danzo's manipulation. The Uchiha's planned coup. The genocide, sanctioned by the very village Sasuke wanted to protect. Sasuke, this is. Naruto, the truth. Ugly. Incomplete. But real. Orochimaru can't give you that. Only I can. Because I'm the only one stupid enough to steal classified files for a friend who doesn't even like me. Sasuke looked at Naruto. Really looked. And for the first time, he didn't see weakness. He saw a different kind of strength. The strength of a boy who had nothing, who had been given every reason to hate the world, and had chosen, again and again, to understand it instead. Sasuke, if I come back, they'll never let me have revenge. Naruto, probably not. Sasuke, if I leave, I'll have to kill you someday. You know too much. You're too dangerous. Naruto, I know. I've known since we were 12. That's why I prepared this. Naruto pulled out a second scroll. A small one. He tossed it to Sasuke. Naruto, that's a route through the land of fire that avoids all ANBU patrols. It leads to a port where a ship leaves for the land of water in 3 days. If you go that way. If you stay because you want to, not because you have to. Sasuke caught the scroll. He looked at Naruto, at the boy who had planned for his betrayal, his departure, his return, and his death, all with equal care. Sasuke, who are you, Naruto? Naruto, I'm the friend you don't deserve. Go, Sasuke. Or stay. But decide. I'm tired of planning for both. Sasuke stood in the valley for a long time. The folder in one hand. The escape route in the other. The truth and the path away from it. He left. But he didn't go to Orochimaru. He went to the port. He took the ship. He went to the land of water, to Kirigakure, to find information on Itachi from outside the Leaf's influence. Naruto returned to Konoha alone. He told the Hokage that Sasuke had escaped. He didn't mention the folder. He didn't mention the ship. He didn't mention that he had, in essence, engineered Sasuke's departure to a safer destination than Orochimaru's lair. Tsunade looked at him with knowing eyes. Tsunade, you let him go. Naruto, I gave him a choice. He chose. Tsunade, you're 14 years old, Naruto. You shouldn't be making choices like that. Naruto, someone has to, Hokage-sama. And everyone else is too strong to think about the weak. The Valley of the End didn't end with a fight. It ended with a departure. And Naruto, walking back to Konoha, felt something crack in his chest. Not his heart. His mask. He had just betrayed the village's interests for a friend. He had just chosen emotion over strategy. And he didn't know if that made him human, or if it made him broken. He decided, as he walked, that it didn't matter. He would wear the mask again tomorrow. But tonight, in the dark, he allowed himself to cry. Not for Sasuke. For himself. For the boy who had learned to be a weapon, and was slowly, painfully, learning to be a person. 2.5 years. In the original timeline, Naruto trained with Jiraiya, learned the Otama Rasengan, improved his taijutsu, and returned stronger, louder, more determined than ever. Here, Naruto returned quieter. Thinner. His orange jumpsuit was gone, replaced by a modified Chunin vest in dark orange and black, less visible in shadows, but still bright enough to make people underestimate him. He wore his headband around his neck, not his forehead, because foreheads were targets. He had spent 2.5 years not training his body, but training his mind. Not learning new jutsu, but mastering the ones he had. Not chasing power, but chasing understanding. Jiraiya, you know, kid, most boys your age come back from training with bigger muscles and flashier techniques. You come back with more notebooks. Naruto, muscles get you killed, Ero Sennin. Notebooks keep you alive. Jiraiya, what are you planning, Naruto? Naruto, I'm planning to survive the Akatsuki. I'm planning to find Sasuke before they do. And I'm planning to do it all without ever throwing a punch that matters. Jiraiya shivered. This wasn't the boy he had taken on a journey. This was something else. A strategist. A spy master. A child who had looked at the world's greatest threats and decided that the only winning move was not to play their game. Gaara. The Kazekage. Jinchuriki of the One Tail. In the original timeline, Naruto connected with him as a fellow Jinchuriki, screaming that he would save his friend, tapping into Kurama's power to do it. Here, Naruto had no kinship with Gaara through demons. But he had kinship through loneliness. Through being a child that a village had tried to turn into a weapon. Naruto, I'll go. But I need a specific team. Tsunade, name it. Naruto, Kakashi-sensei. Sakura. And Shikamaru. Tsunade, not Kiba. Not Neji. Not Lee. Naruto, Kakashi for experience. Sakura for medical and brute force. Shikamaru because I need a mind that can keep up with mine. This isn't a rescue mission, Hokage-sama. It's an extraction from an S-rank enemy base. We don't need fighters. We need survivors. Tsunade approved the team. But she watched Naruto closely. He had changed. The boy who once shouted about ramen and Hokage dreams now spoke like an ANBU commander. He planned like a war general. And he looked at people not as friends or enemies, but as assets and liabilities. She wondered if she had created a monster. Or if Konoha had finally created the ninja it needed. The Akatsuki hideout. Deidara and Sasori. Art and eternity. In the original timeline, Naruto fought with rage, broke through defenses with power, and ultimately won through determination. Here, Naruto didn't break through anything. He walked in through the front door. Naruto, Deidara. Sasori. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm weak, I'm alone, and I have information you want. Deidara, is this a joke? The Kyuubi brat, unguarded. Sasori, no Jinchuriki chakra. I sense nothing unusual. He's normal. Deidara, then let's kill him and take the body. Naruto stepped into the cave. He had no weapons drawn. He had no chakra flaring. He looked like a genin who had gotten lost in the desert. Naruto, before you kill me, consider, I know where Orochimaru is. I know where Sasuke Uchiha is. I know the location of every Akatsuki base east of the Land of Rivers. And I know that Sasori of the Red Sand has a weakness. Sasori, what weakness? Naruto, your grandmother. Chiyo of the Sand. She's still alive. And she's coming here right now, with a team, to rescue the Kazekage. If you kill me, you lose your bargaining chip. If you capture me, you can trade me for her. She's old. Sentimental. She'll trade herself for a hostage. Deidara, why would you tell us this? Naruto, because I'm not here to fight. I'm here to negotiate. You have Gaara. I have information. Let's trade. It was a bluff. A massive, terrifying bluff. Naruto didn't know if Chiyo was coming. He didn't know Orochimaru's exact location. He knew some Akatsuki bases, but not all. But he knew that Akatsuki operated on information. They were an organization of spies and hunters. And spies always value information over blood. Sasori, you interest me, little fox. Sit. Talk. But if you lie. Naruto, if I lie, you have a puppet that can kill me in seconds. I'm aware. That's why I'm telling the truth. Mostly. The negotiation lasted 20 minutes. Naruto gave them real information, Orochimaru's last known location, Sasuke's general direction, the names of 3 Akatsuki informants in the Land of Fire. In exchange, he got them talking. About their art. About their philosophy. About their plans. He learned that Sasori's real body was hidden inside Hiriko. He learned that Deidara's clay required earth chakra and specific hand signs. He learned that they were expecting backup that wouldn't arrive for 6 hours. And then he triggered the trap. Naruto hadn't come alone. He had come with a team positioned exactly where he needed them. But he hadn't told them his full plan, because full knowledge created expectation, and expectation created tells. The cave collapse wasn't explosive. It was surgical. Naruto had spent 3 days in the desert, before approaching the cave, mapping its structural geology. He knew exactly which support pillar to weaken. He knew that Deidara's clay birds would be useless in an enclosed space. He knew that Sasori's puppets required line of sight, and dust blocked sight. The collapse created a dust cloud, a noise cover, and a barrier. In the chaos, Sakura, who had been waiting at a specific distance, broke through the weakened wall and extracted Gaara's body. Kakashi and Shikamaru engaged Deidara not to win, but to drive him toward a specific exit, an exit that led to a canyon where Kankuro's puppets were waiting. And Naruto? Naruto walked out of the cave through a tunnel he had dug over 3 nights, using nothing but a shovel and patience. Kakashi, that was not how I would have planned it. Naruto, that's why it worked. If it looked like a standard plan, they'd have countered it. It had to look like insanity. Insanity is unpredictable. Shikamaru, you negotiated with S-rank criminals. You sat in a cave with 2 men who could kill you, and you talked about art. Naruto, Shikamaru. What's the most dangerous thing in the world? Shikamaru, an intelligent enemy. Naruto, an intelligent enemy who thinks you're not intelligent. An intelligent enemy who thinks you're so weak, so harmless, that they don't need to kill you immediately. That's the most dangerous thing. Because it gives you time. And time is the only weapon the weak have. Gaara lived. The Kazekage was saved. And Naruto returned to Konoha not as a hero, but as something more unsettling, a success story that didn't make sense. He hadn't fought. He hadn't won through power. He had won through deception, preparation, and the willingness to sit across from monsters and make them laugh. The Akatsuki took notice. Not of Naruto's power. Of his mind. And Pain, leader of the Akatsuki, made a note. Uzumaki Naruto. Priority target. Not for capture. For elimination. Haiden and Kakuzu. The zombie duo. Immortal, in their own ways. In the original timeline, Shikamaru defeated Haiden through preparation and sacrifice, Asuma dying in the process. Naruto arrived late, learned the Raisin Shuriken, and helped finish Kakuzu with raw power. Here, Naruto was there from the beginning. Not because he was faster, but because he had predicted this exact scenario 6 months ago. Naruto, Haiden of the Jashin cult. Immortal through a cursed technique that requires ingestion of the target's blood. Kakuzu. Immortal through heart replacement, using a thread technique to integrate stolen hearts. Together, they're functionally unkillable through conventional means. Tsunade, and your recommendation? Naruto, separation and containment. Haiden's technique requires a ritual circle. If he's removed from the circle, he's just a skilled taijutsu user. Kakuzu's hearts can be destroyed, but he replaces them. Unless, we prevent replacement. Tsunade, how? Naruto, I've developed a seal. Not a combat seal. A medical seal. It binds foreign chakra to a specific location, preventing integration with the host's network. If we place this on Kakuzu's body, any new heart he tries to integrate will be rejected. Tsunade, you developed a medical seal. Naruto, I had 2.5 years to study, Hokage-sama. I spent them preparing for enemies I couldn't beat. The fight. It went differently. Shikamaru still separated Haiden, still led him to the Nara forest. But this time, Naruto was with him. Not fighting. Watching. Haiden, come out and fight, cowards. Naruto, Haiden-san. Your god requires blood. But what if I told you that the blood you consumed wasn't Asuma-sensei's? Haiden, what? Naruto, Asuma-sensei has a rare blood type. AB negative. Only 1% of the population has it. The blood you drank? Type O positive. Common. Universal donor. I switched the vials yesterday while you were killing that bounty target. You didn't perform the ritual on Asuma. You performed it on a deer. Haiden looked at his ritual circle. The blood was still wet. But now that he thought about it, the taste was wrong. The color was slightly off. Haiden, you tricked me. Naruto, your immortality is conditional, Haiden-san. Conditional on correct ritual performance. I didn't break your immortality. I just made you waste it. Haiden charged. But Shikamaru's shadows were ready. And Naruto, who had studied Haiden's movement patterns from Asuma's previous encounter, knew exactly where to step to avoid his scythe's arc. The fight lasted 4 minutes. Haiden, deprived of his ritual's psychological certainty, fought sloppily. Shikamaru trapped him. And Naruto, with a seal he had prepared for exactly this moment, bound Haiden's chakra flow. Not killing him. That was impossible. But sealing him. Burying him. Making him immortal in a hole where no one would ever find him. Naruto, your god can't hear you underground, Haiden-san. Maybe you should have prayed for better enemies. Kakuzu was harder. Kakuzu was smart. Kakuzu had seen his partner fall to trickery, and he wasn't going to be tricked. But he didn't need to be tricked. He needed to be outlasted. Kakuzu, you think you can tire me out? I have 5 hearts. I can fight for days. Naruto, good. Because we prepared for days. The fight was a marathon, not a sprint. Naruto had organized the battlefield like a chessboard. Every time Kakuzu used a heart's elemental attack, the team retreated to a pre-prepared counterposition. Fire heart. Retreat to water-soaked trenches. Wind heart. Move to enclosed spaces where wind was less effective. Lightning heart. Ground themselves with wire networks. They didn't try to kill Kakuzu. They tried to exhaust him. To make him use hearts faster than he could think. To force him into mistakes. And when he finally tried to replace a damaged heart, Naruto was there. The medical seal, applied by Sakura during a feint, activated. The new heart rejected. Kakuzu's body convulsed. Naruto, immortality is a maintenance problem, Kakuzu-san. You should have invested in better infrastructure. Kakuzu died. Not from power. From planning. From the accumulated weight of 100 small disadvantages that Naruto had arranged like dominoes. Asuma lived. In this timeline, he didn't die. Because Naruto had been there, not with power, but with the right information at the right time. Asuma, bandaged but alive, looked at Naruto with something like awe. Asuma, you saved my life. Not with strength. With, what? What do I call this? Naruto, you call it preparation, Asuma-sensei. The strong prepare for victory. The weak prepare for survival. I just, prepare more. The Akatsuki lost 2 members. The Leaf gained a reputation. And Naruto, walking home from the mission, felt the mask slip again. He had saved a life. Not through strategy, but because he cared enough to plan for it. He was becoming dangerous. Not because he was cold. But because he was learning to be cold and warm at the same time. To care about people while calculating their survival odds. He didn't know if that made him a good person. But he was starting to think it might make him a good ninja. Itachi Uchiha. The man who murdered his clan. The man who loved his brother enough to destroy him. In the original timeline, Sasuke pursued him with obsession, and Naruto pursued Sasuke with desperation. Here, the dynamic was different. Sasuke had spent 3 years in Kirigakure, training, gathering intelligence, building a network. He had returned to Konoha, not as a prisoner, but as an ally with conditions. And he had brought with him a partner he never expected, Naruto, who had kept in contact through coded messages, dead drops, and a network of informants that spanned 5 countries. They weren't friends anymore. They were co-conspirators. Sasuke, you look terrible. Naruto, you look like you're about to do something stupid. Some things never change. Sasuke, Itachi is in the land of grass. He's moving toward a specific location. An abandoned Uchiha outpost. Naruto, I know. I've had him tracked for 6 months. He's not running from you, Sasuke. He's leading you. Sasuke, leading me where? Naruto, here. The Uchiha Shrine. Where the clan's secret history is kept. He wants you to know the truth. But he wants you to earn it. Naruto had spent years studying Itachi. Not his techniques, those were unbeatable for someone like Naruto. But his patterns. His psychology. Itachi was a man who had sacrificed everything for peace. A man who wanted his brother to live, but wanted him to be strong enough to survive the truth. Naruto, when you face him, don't use the Sharingan immediately. He expects it. He has counters for it. Fight him like a normal ninja. Let him believe you're weaker than you are. Let him teach you. Sasuke, why are you helping me? Naruto, because I read his file. I read the mission logs. I know what he did for the village, Sasuke. And I know that when you kill him, because you will kill him, you're going to need someone to tell you that it wasn't murder. That it was mercy. And I'm the only one who both knows the truth and cares enough to say it. The confrontation. Itachi and Sasuke. In the original timeline, it was a battle of eyes, of genjutsu, of brothers tearing each other apart with love and hate. Here, Sasuke fought differently. He used taijutsu. He used basic ninjutsu. He let Itachi guide him, correct him, push him. And Itachi, seeing this change, understood that someone had prepared Sasuke. Someone had taught him that strength wasn't just power. It was patience. Itachi, who taught you this? Sasuke, a friend. The only one I have left. Itachi, he taught you well. Better than I did. Itachi died. Not from Sasuke's hand directly, his illness took him in the final moments, as it always did. But he died with Sasuke understanding the truth. The Uchiha coup. Danzo's manipulation. The third Hokage's impossible choice. Itachi's sacrifice. And when Sasuke fell to his knees, screaming in grief and rage, Naruto was there. Not to stop him. Just to be there. Naruto, let it out, Sasuke. Let it all out. And when you're done, we'll plan what comes next. Sasuke, he loved me. He killed them all, because he loved me. Naruto, I know. And now you have to decide, does that love become revenge on Konoha? Or does it become protection of what he died for? Sasuke looked at him. At the boy who had never had a brother, but understood brotherhood better than anyone. At the weakling who had planned for this moment years in advance. Sasuke, help me, Naruto. I don't know how to live with this. Naruto, one day at a time. One plan at a time. And Sasuke. You're not alone. Not anymore. The mask was gone. The strategy was secondary. In that moment, Naruto was just a friend. And that friendship, forged in darkness and maintained through distance, became the anchor that kept Sasuke from drowning. They returned to Konoha together. Not as heroes. As survivors. And the village, seeing them together, didn't know what to make of it. The traitor and the tactician. The avenger and the fox. But Tsunade knew. She looked at Naruto and saw the future of Konoha. Not a Hokage who inspired through power. A Hokage who inspired through understanding. She wasn't sure the world was ready for that. But she was sure Naruto was. Pain. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's distant cousin, in a way. The leader of the Akatsuki. The man who had destroyed the Hidden Rain village and would now destroy the Hidden Leaf. In the original timeline, Naruto defeated him through Sage Mode, through Raisin Shuriken, through the power of the Nine Tails and the faith of the villagers. Here, Naruto had no Sage Mode. He hadn't trained at Mount Mayaboku because he lacked the chakra to balance natural energy. He had no Raisin Shuriken. He had no demon to lend him power when all hope was lost. What he had was 2 years of preparation. A village that had, slowly, learned to trust his strategies. And a mind that had spent every waking moment planning for exactly this day. Naruto, pain is coming. I don't know when, but I know how. He uses 6 bodies, the 6 paths of pain. Each body has a specific ability. Deva path, gravity manipulation. Asura path, mechanical weapons. Human path, soul extraction. Animal path, summons. Preta path, chakra absorption. Naraka path, interrogation and revival. Tsunade, how do you know this? Naruto, I've been interrogating captured Rain Nin for 2 years. I've been analyzing the patterns of Akatsuki attacks. And I've been studying the Rinnegan legends. Pain isn't one person. He's a system. And systems have vulnerabilities. Tsunade, what vulnerabilities? Naruto, range. The bodies are controlled remotely, but they need to be within a certain distance of the controller. If we can identify the controller's location and disrupt it, the bodies become puppets without strings. Also, the bodies share vision. They can see everything each other sees. But that means they share blind spots too. If all 6 bodies look at the same thing, they see nothing else. Tsunade authorized Naruto's plan. It was radical. It was risky. It relied on the entire village acting in coordination, something Konoha had never done. But Tsunade trusted him. Because he had been right too many times. The attack came at dawn. 6 bodies. 6 nightmares. In the original timeline, they tore through Konoha like paper, killing hundreds, destroying the village, until Naruto arrived to save the day. Here, Konoha was ready. Deva path, no pain. Naruto, all units, execute Plan Fox 1. I repeat, Fox 1. The village didn't panic. Because they had rehearsed. Civilians moved to shelters along specific routes. Chunin activated barriers at predetermined points. Jonin moved to intercept not the bodies, but the summons. Naruto's plan was simple: don't fight pain where he is strong. Fight him where he is weak. The animal path summons were devastating. But Naruto had prepared. Every street in Konoha had been modified over the past year, modifications that looked like normal repairs but were actually structural traps. The dog summon, chasing a team of Chunin, ran down a street that Naruto had weakened. At the right moment, a Jonin with Earth style collapsed the buildings on both sides. The summon was buried. Not killed, buried. Immobilized. The Asura Path's missiles were fast. But Naruto had studied their trajectory patterns. He knew they homed in on chakra signatures. So Konoha's sensor core, positioned on every tower, broadcast false chakra signals, dozens of them, moving in patterns that led the missiles to empty fields where they harmlessly detonated. The Preta path was the most dangerous. Chakra absorption meant ninjutsu was useless. So Naruto's plan avoided ninjutsu. The barriers weren't chakra-based. They were physical: steel plates, earth walls, water trenches. The Preta path could absorb chakra, but it couldn't absorb a lake. It couldn't absorb a wall of compacted earth 30 meters thick. The human path's soul extraction was instant death. But Naruto had prepared for that too. Every Chunin in the field wore a specific seal, a seal Naruto had developed with Tsunade's help. Not a protective seal. A destructive one. If the human path touched them, the seal triggered, releasing a burst of stored chakra directly into the path's nervous system. It didn't kill the path. But it stunned it. For 3 seconds. And 3 seconds was enough for a waiting ANBU squad to sever its limbs. The Deva Path. The leader. The gravity user. In the original timeline, it destroyed Konoha with a single Shinra Tensei, flattening the village in a sphere of impossible force. Here, Naruto had studied the technique's cooldown. 5 seconds between uses. And the range was limited, pain could only affect what he could see. Naruto, all units, Fox 7. Now. From every direction, smoke bombs launched. Not ordinary smoke, smoke mixed with aluminum powder and metal filings, creating a dense, reflective fog that scattered light and chakra alike. The Deva Path, looking down, saw nothing but a shimmering, impenetrable haze. He used Shinra Tensei. The fog was blown away. But the technique's cooldown began. And in those 5 seconds, Naruto moved. Naruto, target located. Northwest Tower, 1,200 meters. Single chakra signature, massive, distinct. It's him. It's the controller. Naruto had figured it out. The bodies were controlled from a specific location. A tower, recently abandoned, recently occupied. He had identified it not through chakra sensing, he couldn't sense chakra well, but through logic. The bodies moved in patterns that suggested a central hub. Their reactions had microdelays that increased with distance. The math was clear. He couldn't fight the controller. But he didn't need to. Nagato. The real pain. He sat in his chair, controlling 6 bodies, fighting a war against an entire village. He was powerful. He was almost a god. But he was also a man in a chair. A man who needed to breathe. A man who needed to focus. And Naruto had sent someone to talk to him. Conan, Nagato. Stop. Nagato, Conan. What are you doing here? Conan, the leaf knew. They knew where you were. They sent me a message. Not a threat. A question. Nagato, what question? Conan, what would Yahiko say if he saw you destroying villages to save them? Nagato froze. Yahiko. His best friend. The original leader of the Akatsuki. The man he had become, in death, a god to replace. The message wasn't from Conan. It was from Naruto. Naruto, who had spent years studying the Akatsuki's history, who had learned about Yahiko from captured Rain Nin, who had crafted exactly the right words to break Nagato's concentration. And as Nagato's concentration wavered, the 6 paths faltered. It was enough. The paths, momentarily out of sync, were overwhelmed. The Deva Path's Shinra Tensei misfired, hitting empty ground. The Animal Path's summons dissolved. The Azura Path was destroyed by a coordinated Jonin assault. And Naruto, who had been waiting for exactly this moment, walked onto the battlefield. Not to fight. To talk. Naruto, Nagato-san. I know you're listening. I know you can hear me through that body. So hear this, you don't need to destroy Konoha to make the world notice pain. The world already notices. You're just making it numb. Deva Path, you understand nothing. Naruto, I understand everything. I understand that you lost your parents to war. I understand that you lost Yahiko to betrayal. I understand that you think peace requires sacrifice. But I'm here, Nagato-san, to tell you that the greatest sacrifice isn't dying for peace. It's living for it. Every day. In a world that hurts you. Naruto stepped closer. The Deva path was damaged, barely functional. But it could still kill him with a touch. Naruto, I'm weak, Nagato-san. I have no demon. No bloodline. No power. But I'm alive. And every day I stay alive, I prove that the world hasn't won. That pain hasn't won. You want to teach the world pain. I'm here to teach it hope. One day at a time. One plan at a time. Nagato, in his tower, felt something he hadn't felt in years. Tears. Real tears, not the rain that always surrounded him. He thought of Yahiko. He thought of Conan. He thought of the boy he had been, before the Rinnegan, before the war, before the pain. And he made a choice. The Rinne rebirth. The technique that brought back the dead. In the original timeline, Nagato used it to revive everyone he had killed in Konoha, dying in the process. Here, he used it too. But not because Naruto had overpowered him. Because Naruto had out-understood him. Had reached the part of Nagato that was still a boy from the Rain Village, still dreaming of peace, still capable of believing that someone, somewhere, might understand. As Nagato died, he smiled. Nagato, Uzumaki Naruto. You have no power, but you have something better. You have the right answer. Protect it. Protect the world. Konoha was saved. Not by a hero with infinite chakra. Not by a demon child. By a boy who had prepared for the worst day of his life, every day, for years. The villagers looked at Naruto differently after that. Not as the demon. Not as the dead last. Not even as the tactician. They looked at him as the one who had saved them with nothing but his mind. And in the ruins of the village, as the sun rose through the smoke, Naruto stood alone and allowed himself to feel proud. Just for a moment. Then he opened his notebook and began planning for the next threat. Because the war was coming. And he still had so much to prepare. The 5 Kage Summit. In the original timeline, Naruto arrived to beg for Sasuke's life, to show his naivety, his hope, his refusal to give up on his friend. He was mocked, dismissed, and ultimately proven right through violence. Here, Naruto arrived as Tsunade's strategic advisor. A Chunin, promoted after Pain's assault, sitting at the table with the most powerful people in the world. Not because he was strong. Because he was necessary. Tsunade, the Akatsuki threat has evolved. Madara Uchiha, if he is who he claims, represents an existential threat to all shinobi nations. I propose a joint task force. Reikage, joint. With the leaf. Your village harbored the Kyubi, produced the Uchiha traitor, and now you want to lead. Tsunade, I'm not proposing the leaf lead. I'm proposing Uzumaki Naruto coordinate. The room went silent. Every eye turned to Naruto, the thin, pale teenager in the corner, wearing dark orange and black, with a notebook in his hand and no visible weapons. Reikage, a child. You insult us, Hokage. Naruto, Reikage-sama. 3 months ago, your village lost a border outpost to an Akatsuki cell. You don't know how they found it, because the outpost had no chakra signatures, your standard anti-censor protocol. But they found it anyway. Do you want to know how? Reikage, how? Naruto, thermal tracking. The Akatsuki have developed a technique that detects body heat, not chakra. Your outpost was invisible to sensors but visible to heat. I know this because I captured one of their scouts 2 months ago and interrogated him. Not with force. With information. I knew his family's location. I knew his gambling debts. I knew he wanted to live. So he talked. Naruto distributed copies of the file. Every Kage received one. Naruto, the Akatsuki aren't just collecting bijou anymore. They're developing counterintelligence techniques. They're mapping our weaknesses. And they're doing it faster than we're adapting. If we don't share information, real information, not diplomatic half-truths, we lose. Not one village. All of us. Mizukage, this is comprehensive. Naruto, it's also incomplete. I need your intelligence to fill the gaps. I need the Sans puppet networks. I need the cloud sensor grid. I need the stone's earth-style fortifications and the mist's water routes. Alone, we're puzzles with missing pieces. Together, we're a picture. And that picture tells us exactly where Madara is weak. The Kage looked at each other. Then they looked at Naruto. Not as a child. As an equal. A strange, unsettling equal who had no power but held all the cards. Gaara, I trust him. The sand will cooperate. Gaara's word carried weight. He was the Kazekage, a Jinchuriki, a survivor. And he had been saved by this very strategist, years ago, in a desert cave. The alliance formed. Not through strength. Through information. Through the recognition that in a world of gods and demons, the mind was the last equalizer. Sasuke attacked the summit. In the original timeline, he was consumed by rage, fighting the Kage, nearly dying, proving his descent into darkness. Here, Sasuke came with a different purpose. He came with information. Sasuke, I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to give you this. Naruto, it's Danzo's records. Roots operations. The Uchiha massacre. Everything. Sasuke, I spent 3 years collecting it. It's the truth. The whole truth. About Konoha. About the Uchiha. About everything. The room was silent. Sasuke, the traitor, the avenger, stood before the 5 most powerful ninja in the world and offered transparency. Not because he had become good. But because Naruto had taught him that information was sharper than any blade. Naruto, this changes things. Danzo was working with Akatsuki. Not directly, but through intermediaries. He gave them information. In exchange for, what? Power? Survival? We need to know. And we need to use this to turn their network against them. Reikage, you're suggesting we use traitors' intel. Naruto, I'm suggesting we use every tool we have. Because Madara has been planning this war for decades. And we've been planning for months. The only way we win is if we're willing to be as ruthless as he is, with our thinking, not our hearts. The summit ended with an alliance. A real one. And with a new understanding of Naruto Uzumaki. He wasn't the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. He wasn't a powerhouse. He was the architect of survival. The boy who had turned weakness into the world's most valuable currency, knowledge. As the Kage left, Tsunade pulled Naruto aside. Tsunade, you manipulated them. All of them. Even me. Naruto, yes. Tsunade, why? Naruto, because the world is burning, Hokage-sama. And I don't have water to put it out. All I have is the ability to convince people to stop throwing oil on the fire. Tsunade placed a hand on his shoulder. It was the first time she had touched him in years. Tsunade, when this war is over, Naruto, what will you do? Naruto, I'll find a quiet place. And I'll sleep for a week. And then I'll start planning for the next war. Because there will always be a next war. And there will always be someone weak who needs to outthink the strong. The summit closed. The Fourth Shinobi World War began. But it began with the nations united, not by a common enemy, but by a common mind. The Fourth Shinobi World War. In the original timeline, Naruto was the centerpiece. The Jinchuriki who trained with Killer Bee, mastered Kurama's chakra, became a hero of the battlefield, and turned the tide with power that shook the earth. Here, Naruto was in the command tent. He had no Bijou chakra to share. No sensory abilities to detect the enemy. What he had was a map, a radio, and a mind that had memorized the strengths and weaknesses of every division commander. He was, officially, a Chunin. Unofficially, he was the war's chief strategist. Naruto, the White Zetsu army can mimic chakra signatures. They can look like anyone. Standard identification fails. So we're not using identification. We're using behavior protocols. Darui, behavior protocols. Naruto, every soldier is assigned a specific code phrase. Not a password, those can be extracted. A behavior. A way of standing. A specific hand sign made when saluting. Something unconscious. The Zetsu can copy memories, but they can't copy instinct. If a soldier doesn't perform their behavior protocol, they're detained. Not killed. Detained. Gaara, and the reincarnated ninja. The Edo Tensei. Naruto, they're immortal. They regenerate. Fighting them wastes resources. So we don't fight them. We contain them. I've prepared specific teams for each known reincarnated shinobi. Teams designed not to win, but to stall. To trap. To bury. Every Edo Tensei body we've encountered has a specific elemental affinity. Counter that affinity, and you don't kill them, you neutralize them. Water beats fire. Earth beats water. Wind beats earth. Basic nature transformation, applied strategically. The commanders listened. Some resented taking orders from a teenager. But they had seen Pain's assault. They had seen the summit. They knew that this boy, this weak, chakra poor boy, had saved more lives through planning than most jonin had through combat. The war raged. And Naruto's plans worked. When the White Zetsu infiltrated the medical camp, they were identified not by their chakra, but by their failure to perform the specific limping gait that Naruto had assigned to all medical personnel, a gait that looked like a weakness but was actually a code. When Edo Tensei Asuma attacked the First Division, Darui didn't try to kill him. He used Naruto's prepared strategy, lightning chakra, to disrupt the Edo Tensei's control signals, followed by a sealing team that buried Asuma under 50 tons of compressed earth. Not dead. Contained. When Edo Tensei Nagato and Itachi appeared, Naruto had prepared a specific counter, a genjutsu trap designed by Kurenai and Itachi himself, years ago, left as a failsafe in case he was ever reincarnated. Itachi, fighting against his own programming, activated the trap and sealed himself. Every victory was small. Every victory was conditional. But they accumulated. Madara Uchiha. Resurrected. The ultimate enemy. In the original timeline, Naruto fought him with the power of the Nine Tails, with Sasuke's Rinnegan, with the strength of a demigod. Here, Naruto couldn't fight him at all. One glance from Madara's Sharingan would kill him. One touch would shatter his bones. One meteor would obliterate him. So Naruto didn't fight. He ran. But he ran with purpose. Naruto, all units, disengage. I repeat, disengage. Do not engage Madara directly. He's testing our response patterns. He's learning how we fight. Radio, but sir, we can't just let him destroy. Naruto, we can. We will. Because every technique he uses tells us something. That meteor jutsu. It requires specific hand seals and a 10-second charge time. The Susanoo. It drains his chakra at a rate of approximately 3% per minute at full size. The wood release. It's Hashirama's cells, which means it has a specific cellular weakness to. Naruto stopped. He had an idea. A terrible, wonderful idea. Naruto, get me Tsunade. Get me Sakura. Get me every medic nin within range. And get me a sample of Hashirama's cells. Any sample. From the Hokage monument, from the Senju ruins, anywhere. They got him the sample. A fragment of Hashirama's DNA, preserved in the Hokage's office for generations. Naruto worked through the night. Not with jutsu. With a microscope. With medical texts. With Tsunade's guidance. And he found it. Naruto, Hashirama's cells are powerful because they regenerate. But regeneration requires cellular division. And cellular division can be disrupted. Tsunade, disrupted how? Naruto, this is a compound that accelerates cellular senescence. It forces cells to age. Rapidly. Hashirama's cells, when exposed to this, don't regenerate. They die. They die faster than they can replicate. Tsunade, you created an anti-Hashirama poison. Naruto, it's not a weapon. It's a medicine. A medicine that treats the disease of immortality. If we can deliver this to Madara's body, into his bloodstream, into his would-release constructs, we can slow him down. Not stop him. But slow him enough that the Kage can fight him. That Sasuke can fight him. The plan was insane. It required getting close enough to Madara to inject him. It required someone fast, someone stealthy, someone willing to die. Naruto volunteered. Not because he was fast. He wasn't. But because he had calculated that Madara's arrogance, his certainty that no weakling could harm him, was the perfect cover. Madara wouldn't kill Naruto immediately. He would toy with him. And in that toying, there would be an opportunity. Madara, you? The weakling from Konoha? You come to die. Naruto, I come to talk, Madara-sama. To offer you something. Madara, what could you possibly offer me? Naruto, the location of the remaining bijou. The 8 tails and the 9 tails. I know where they are. I'll tell you. In exchange for 5 minutes of conversation. Madara, 5 minutes. Naruto, I'm a weakling, Madara-sama. I have no power. But I have curiosity. I want to know what the world looks like to someone who has lived through all of shinobi history. Before I die, because we both know you're going to kill me, I want to understand. Madara laughed. It was a genuine, delighted laugh. This child, this nothing, was offering him entertainment. And Madara, who had grown bored with a world of weaklings, found himself charmed. Madara, very well. 5 minutes. Speak. Naruto talked. He asked about the Warring States period. About Hashirama. About the village system. About the infinite Tsukuyomi. And as he talked, he moved. Subtly. Shifting his weight. Adjusting his stance. Getting closer. Madara didn't notice. He was enjoying the conversation too much. No one had asked him these questions in decades. No one had treated him like a teacher rather than a threat. At 4 minutes and 30 seconds, Naruto was close enough. He had the injector hidden in his sleeve, a modified chakra scalpel that could pierce even reinforced skin. He had practiced the motion 1,000 times. At 4 minutes and 50 seconds, he struck. The injector hit Madara's arm. The compound entered his bloodstream. It was a tiny amount, barely enough to matter. But it was enough. Madara's eyes widened. Not in pain. In recognition. Madara, clever. Very clever. You didn't come to talk. You came to treat me like a disease. Naruto, you're not a disease, Madara-sama. You're a symptom. And symptoms can be managed. Madara killed him. Or tried to. He struck with a speed that should have ended Naruto instantly. But Naruto had prepared for this too. He had a substitution seal on his chest, a seal that activated automatically, swapping him with a log he had positioned at the edge of the battlefield 3 hours ago. He appeared 3 kilometers away, gasping, bleeding from the force of the near miss. But alive. And Madara. Madara felt his cells slowing. His would release wilting. His immortality, not gone, but compromised. It was enough. The 5 Kage, waiting for this moment, attacked. Sasuke, waiting for this moment, attacked. And Madara, for the first time in a century, was forced to fight seriously. Naruto, in the medic tent, being treated for internal bleeding, listened to the reports. He didn't smile. He just made a note. Note #4892, even gods can be poisoned. The dose makes the demon. The final stages. In the original timeline, this was where Naruto and Sasuke became demigods. Where they received 6 paths chakra, where they fought on equal terms with beings that reshaped reality. Here, Naruto had no 6 paths chakra. He had no Rinnegan. He had no Bijou mode. He had a broken rib, a concussion, and a notebook full of observations about people who could literally rewrite the world. He was, by any objective measure, useless in this fight. But he refused to be useless. Obito. The Ten-Tails Jinchuriki. He had the power of a god. He could create and destroy at will. He was, for all intents and purposes, unstoppable. But Naruto had studied him. Not his power. His psychology. Naruto, Obito isn't fighting to win. He's fighting to prove a point. He wants the world to see that the shinobi system is broken. That infinite Tsukuyomi is the only peace. He's not a conqueror. He's a preacher. Sasuke, so what? Naruto, so he has a weakness. Preachers need an audience. If we stop being his audience, if we stop engaging him directly, if we stop trying to beat him with force, he gets frustrated. Frustrated people make mistakes. The strategy was radical. Instead of attacking Obito, the Allied forces retreated. They evacuated. They left the battlefield empty. Obito stood in the center of a deserted wasteland, his godlike power useless against an enemy that wouldn't fight. Obito, where are you? Fight me. Face me. Naruto, we're here, Obito-san. We're just not playing your game. You want to destroy the shinobi world. Destroy an empty field. You want to prove your power. Prove it to the trees. Obito raged. He destroyed mountains. He created explosions that could be seen from space. But he couldn't force the alliance to engage. And in his rage, he made a mistake. He extended himself too far. He tried to use the infinite Tsukuyomi prematurely, before the moon was properly aligned, before his chakra was fully stabilized. The technique failed. Not completely, but enough. Enough to create a window. Naruto, now. All units, execute Plan Moonfall. Now. Plan Moonfall. Naruto's masterpiece. A plan designed not to defeat a god, but to exhaust one. The alliance attacked from all directions simultaneously. Not with powerful techniques, with small, precise, annoying attacks. Kunai with explosive tags. Distraction genjutsu. Smoke bombs. Every time Obito tried to focus his power on one target, 3 others hit him from behind. It wasn't doing damage. It was doing something more important, consuming his attention. His processing power. His ability to think. And while Obito was distracted, Sasuke struck. Not with power, with precision. A chakra scalpel, modified with the same compound Naruto had used on Madara, inserted into Obito's ten-tails seal. The seal destabilized. The ten-tails rebelled. And Obito, who had never learned to truly control the beast because he had relied on power rather than understanding, lost control. Obito fell. Not because he was weaker than Naruto. But because he was less prepared. He had spent years planning his apocalypse. Naruto had spent years planning for planners. But the war wasn't over. Madara absorbed the ten-tails. And then Kaguya was resurrected. The rabbit goddess. The origin of chakra. A being beyond comprehension. Kaguya Otsutsuki. The progenitor of chakra. She existed on a level beyond ninja. She could rewrite dimensions. She could erase people from existence. She was, in every meaningful sense, a god. And Naruto had to fight her. Or rather, he had to help Sasuke fight her. Because Sasuke, with his Rinnegan and his Sharingan, was the only one who could even perceive her movements. But Sasuke couldn't do it alone. He needed someone to think. To plan. To see the patterns that even gods followed. Sasuke, Naruto. I can't beat her. I can see her, but I can't touch her. She's too fast. Too strong. Naruto, then don't try to touch her. Try to understand her. Sasuke, what? Naruto, Kaguya isn't a fighter, Sasuke. She's a mother. A mother who ate the chakra fruit to protect her sons, and then lost them because of it. She's not trying to kill us. She's trying to preserve us. The infinite Tsukuyomi is her version of safety. A world where no one can hurt each other because no one is awake. Sasuke, so. Naruto, so we don't fight her safety. We threaten it. We make her feel that preserving us is more dangerous than destroying us. The plan was insane. It required Sasuke to use his Rinnegan to open a portal to a specific dimension, a dimension Naruto had identified by analyzing the patterns of Kagaya's teleportation. It required Naruto to enter that dimension alone. And it required him to do something no one had ever done. He had to make Kagaya angry. Truly, personally angry. Kagaya, you are the weak one. The one with no chakra. Why do you stand before me? Naruto, because I'm the one who understands you, Akatsuki-sama. I know you lost your sons. I know you created the shinobi world out of grief. And I know that you're lonely. Kagaya, lonely. Naruto, you put the world to sleep because awake people leave. They grow up. They change. They die. Sleeping people stay forever. I understand that. I've been alone my whole life. I know what it's like to want to freeze time so no one can abandon you. Kagaya stared at him. No one had spoken to her like this in 1,000 years. No one had seen her pain. They had only seen her power. Kagaya, you understand. Naruto, I do. But I also know that freezing the world doesn't save it. It just makes it a tomb. Your sons didn't leave because the world was dangerous. They left because you stopped seeing them. Stopped hearing them. Stopped letting them be real. Kagaya's expression changed. Not softening. But cracking. The divine mask slipping to reveal the grieving mother beneath. Kagaya, I only wanted to protect them. Naruto, I know. But protection isn't control. And love isn't possession. You have to let go, Kagaya-sama. Let go of the world. Let go of the chakra. Let go of your son's memory, and let them rest. Tears fell from Kagaya's eyes. Divine tears, each one a pearl of pure chakra. She had been alone for so long. So impossibly long. And this week, Chakra poor child was the first person to see her. Not the god. The woman. Kagaya, I don't know how. Naruto, I do. Because I had to learn. Let me show you. He reached out his hand. A human hand. No chakra. No power. Just warmth. And Kagaya, the progenitor of all shinobi, took it. Sasuke, now. Sasuke didn't attack Kagaya. He attacked the dimension itself. Using his Rinnegan, he destabilized the pocket reality, creating a vacuum that pulled at Kagaya's essence. She didn't resist. She was too busy feeling. Too busy remembering what it was like to be human. Naruto held her hand as the dimension collapsed. He whispered to her. Naruto, it's okay to rest. It's okay to let go. Thank you for creating us. We'll take it from here. Kagaya smiled. A real, human smile. And then she dissolved. Not into nothing, but into chakra. Into the world. Into the trees and the rivers and the people she had once wanted to control. She became the world she had tried to possess. And in becoming it, she was finally free. The war ended. Not with a punch. Not with a jutsu. Not with the power of a demon or a god. It ended with understanding. With empathy. With a boy who had nothing offering his hand to a goddess who had everything, and both of them finding, in that touch, something neither had expected. Peace. Epilogue, the Hokage who thought ... Years passed. The world changed. The shinobi nations, bound by shared survival, slowly became something else. Not friends, exactly. But not enemies. A network. A system. A world where information flowed more freely than blood. And at the center of it all, in the Hokage's office, sat a man who had never won a fight with his fists. Naruto Uzumaki. 7th Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Not the strongest ninja in history. Not the fastest. Not the most powerful. But the smartest. The most prepared. The one who understood that strength was a tool, not a virtue. That power without wisdom was just destruction waiting for a target. And that the weakest person in the room, if they understood the room, could change everything. His inauguration was unlike any other. He didn't give a speech about power. He didn't promise to protect everyone with his strength. He promised to listen. To plan. To prepare. To make sure that no child ever had to grow up alone, armed with nothing but their mind, just to survive. Naruto, I was the weakest genin in the academy. I failed the clone technique 3 times. I couldn't throw a shuriken straight. I had no clan, no bloodline, no demon to save me. The crowd was silent. They knew his story. Everyone knew it now. Naruto, but I had something better. I had teachers who believed in me. Friends who stood by me. And I had the time to think. To prepare. To understand that the world isn't divided into strong and weak. It's divided into those who think they're strong enough to ignore the weak, and those who know that the weak are just the strong who haven't found their way yet. He looked out at the crowd. At the children in the front row, wearing their academy uniforms. At the parents who had once feared him. At the friends who had become family. Naruto, I'm not the strongest Hokage. I'm not the fastest. I'm definitely not the smartest. Shikamaru, stopped nodding. Naruto, but I am the most prepared. And I will spend every day of my tenure making sure this village is prepared too. Prepared for peace. Prepared for war. Prepared for the unexpected. Because the unexpected is just the expected that we forgot to plan for. The crowd cheered. Not the roar of a mob demanding a hero. The applause of people who had learned, slowly and painfully, that heroes didn't need to be gods. They just needed to care enough to think. Boruto, Dad. Come on, you're missing dinner again. Naruto, sorry. Just one more report. Boruto, what's it about? Naruto, it's about a village in the land of waves. They're having trouble with bandits. Nothing serious. But I want to make sure we handle it right. Boruto, why? It's just bandits. Send some ninja. Naruto, because, just bandits, to us is, life or death, to them. And because every problem is serious if it's yours. I learned that a long time ago, when I was the smallest problem in the biggest village. Boruto looked at his father. At the man who had become a legend not by beating gods, but by understanding them. Not by having power, but by knowing when not to use it. Boruto, Dad. Were you really the weakest? Naruto, I really was. And you know what? Being weak was the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me that the world doesn't need more strength. It needs more people who care enough to be clever. Who care enough to be kind. Who care enough to try. He closed the report. Stood up. Took his son's hand. Naruto, come on. Your mother's going to kill me if I'm late again. Boruto, she says you're getting slow. Naruto, slow. I'll have you know I once outran a S-rank criminal. Boruto, yeah, right. Naruto, okay, I outthought him while walking very fast. Same difference. They walked out of the office, into the light of the village. The hidden leaf, rebuilt and thriving. A village that had learned, through fire and pain and the stubbornness of one weak boy, that strength came in many forms. And the greatest form was the strength to keep going. To keep planning. To keep hoping. Even when you had nothing. Especially when you had nothing. What if Naruto never had Kurama? He would have been weak. He would have been bitter. He would have been forced to become intelligent instead of overpowering everyone. And in that weakness, that bitterness, that intelligence, he would have become something the ninja world had never seen. A hero who won not because he was stronger than his enemies, but because he understood them. And in understanding, he saved them all. Final notes. This has been the story of Uzumaki Naruto. Not the Jinchuriki. Not the demon. Just the boy. The boy who planned. The boy who prepared. The boy who refused to be thrown away. And if there's one lesson to take from his story, it's this. You don't need power to change the world. You need patience. You need perspective. And you need the courage to care about people who don't care about you. Because that caring, that impossible, irrational, stubborn caring, is what turns weakness into strength. That's the real ninja way. Thank you for listening. Bonus scenes, the weight of weakness . There's a moment in every weak person's life when they realize that the world isn't fair. Not in the dramatic, storybook way. Not in the villain wins way. But in the quiet, grinding, everyday way. The way that says, you can work twice as hard and get half as far. You can be twice as kind and receive half as much. You can prepare for everything and still lose, because someone stronger decided to take what you have. 9-year-old Naruto, taping together a broken kunai because the academy wouldn't issue him a new one, learned this lesson early. He had asked for a replacement. The weapons master had looked at him, looked at his file, and said, "Dead last kids don't get second chances. Make it last, or do without." So Naruto learned it to repair. To maintain. To preserve. He learned that resources were finite, and that finite resources in the hands of the weak required infinite care. Naruto, if I can't have a sharp blade, I need to know exactly where to strike so a dull blade works. If I can't have many kunai, I need to know how to retrieve the ones I throw. If I can't have good tools, I need to become the best at using bad ones. This was the philosophy that defined him. Not, I will become strong. But, I will become so efficient that strength becomes irrelevant. He practiced with the taped kunai for 6 months. He learned that a dull blade, if thrown at exactly the right angle, could still pierce fabric. That a cracked handle, if gripped precisely, could still fly straight. That a weapon's weakness was only a weakness if you didn't understand it completely. When he finally earned enough mission pay to buy a real kunai set, he didn't throw away the taped one. He kept it. He used it for practice. He used it to remind himself that perfection wasn't about having the best. It was about making the best of what you had. Librarian, you're here every night. Don't you have parents? Naruto, no. Librarian, what are you reading? Naruto, the 36 Stratagems of Shinobi Warfare. It's forbidden to students below Chunin. Librarian, then why? Naruto, because you leave the key to the restricted section under the 3rd shelf plant. And because you go home at 6, and I know how to pick the lock with a bent paperclip. And because, no one else will teach me. The librarian, an old woman named Yuki who had lost her grandson in the Ninetales attack, looked at this lonely child. This child who should have been protected. Who should have been nurtured. Who should have been given everything, because he had lost everything. She didn't report him. Instead, she sat down beside him. Yuki, the 36 stratagems. Do you understand them? Naruto, some. Not all. Kill with a borrowed knife, I get that. Use your enemy's strength against them. Feign madness but keep your balance, I think that means act crazy so people underestimate you. But, loot a burning house. I don't understand. It seems cruel. Yuki, it means take advantage of chaos. When your enemy is distracted by their own disaster, that's when you strike. Or, when you rescue what you need. Cruelty and kindness can look the same, depending on who's watching. Naruto, so, the same action can be good or bad, depending on the context. Yuki, yes. And that's why strategy is harder than strength. Strength has one answer, hit harder. Strategy has infinite answers, and you have to choose the right one every time. Yuki became his secret teacher. Not in jutsu. In history. In philosophy. In the great shinobi thinkers who had won wars without winning battles. She taught him about Nara Shikaku's grandfather, who had defeated an invading army by redirecting a river. She taught him about the second Hokage's intelligence network, which had prevented more wars than any army. She taught him about the Uzumaki clan's sealing techniques, not the powerful ones, but the subtle ones. The ones that locked doors, preserved food, kept secrets. She taught him that his clan had been more than warriors. They had been the world's librarians. The preservers. The ones who kept knowledge alive when the strong were busy killing each other. Naruto, so I'm not just weak. I'm traditional. Yuki, you're Uzumaki. And Uzumaki means survivor. Not through power. Through persistence. Through the refusal to let anything be forgotten. Yuki died the winter before Naruto graduated. She left him her library key. And a note. Note, Naruto. The world will tell you that power is all that matters. They are wrong. Power is what matters to the powerful. But to the world, to history, what matters is what survives. Be the one who survives. Be the one who remembers. Be the one who plans for a future that the strong can't see, because they're too busy looking at themselves. Naruto kept the note in his pocket for the rest of his life. He kept the key on a chain around his neck. And he kept her lessons in his mind, always. Bonus scenes, the mask of the fool The mask. The orange jumpsuit. The loud laugh. The obsession with ramen. These weren't accidents. They weren't the natural expressions of a happy child. They were armor. Armor that Naruto had designed, piece by piece, through years of observation. Naruto, observation, villagers fear competence in orphans. An orphan who is capable is a threat. An orphan who is harmless is ignored. An orphan who is annoying is mocked. Mockery is safer than fear. Fear leads to elimination. Mockery leads to dismissal. Dismissal leads to opportunity. The orange jumpsuit, high visibility, makes stealth impossible. Therefore, no one expects stealth. They see me coming and relax. Relaxation is the first step toward carelessness. The ramen obsession, food is universal. Everyone eats. Talking about food is non-threatening. It makes me seem simple. Simple people are underestimated. Underestimated people are given space. Space is where preparation happens. The loudness, noise covers thought. If I am always talking, no one expects me to be listening. If I am always moving, no one expects me to be watching. If I am always failing publicly, no one expects me to succeed privately. He had built this persona like a fortress. Not to keep people out, but to keep the real him hidden. The real him was quiet. The real him was angry. The real him was so tired of being hurt that he had decided, at age 7, to never let anyone close enough to hurt him again. But humans need connection. Even damaged ones. Even strategic ones. And Naruto, for all his planning, was still human. Sakura, why is he always sleeping? Doesn't he care about getting stronger? Sasuke, he's the dead last. He knows he can't catch up. He's given up. Naruto wasn't sleeping. He was listening. He was cataloging their techniques. He was noting that Sasuke's fireball jutsu had a 2.3-second charge time. That Sakura's punches, while strong, telegraphed from her shoulder. That Kakashi's lateness was actually a test. He arrived exactly when he needed to see how they behaved unsupervised. He was also, in a small part of his heart, hurting. Because he wanted to tell them. He wanted to say, I'm not sleeping. I'm studying. I'm not stupid. I'm careful. I'm not lazy. I'm exhausted from being two people at once. But he didn't. Because the mask was working. Because Sasuke, who mocked him, never saw him as a threat. Because Sakura, who ignored him, never guarded her words around him. Because Kakashi, who watched everyone, watched Naruto with curiosity rather than suspicion. The mask bought him safety. And safety was worth loneliness. Naruto, I wonder if you get tired of being watched. Everyone looks at you, but no one sees you. They see the light, not the rock. They see the reflection, not the surface. They think you're beautiful, but they'd die if they tried to stand on you. He laughed at himself. A real laugh, not the performative one. A sad, quiet laugh. Naruto, I'm talking to the moon. I really am crazy. Or maybe I'm just so alone that even a rock in space feels like company. In that moment, if anyone had seen him, really seen him, they would have understood. This wasn't a demon child. This wasn't a monster. This was a boy who had built a fortress so high that he couldn't see out, and no one could see in. A boy who wanted, more than anything, for someone to knock on the door and say, I know you're in there. And I'm staying until you open up. But no one came. So he put the mask back on. And he planned. And he survived. Because that was what Uzumaki did. Bonus scenes, the darkness of efficiency equals. There's a cost to efficiency. A cost to always choosing the optimal path. A cost to seeing people as problems to be solved rather than souls to be saved. Naruto paid that cost every day. But he paid it most heavily after his first kill. Haku hadn't died. Naruto had made sure of that. The explosive tag was calibrated to maim, not kill. The hand could be healed. The boy would live. But Naruto had still caused that scream. He had still chosen to hurt someone who had shown him mercy. And in that choice, he had crossed a line. Naruto, I hurt him because it was efficient. Because letting him fight at full strength was dangerous. Because I was afraid. He looked at his hands. Small hands. Scarred from training. Scarred from the kunai he had taped together years ago. Hands that had learned to write, to draw, to plan. Hands that had never been meant for violence. But violence was the language of the ninja world. And Naruto, however much he hated it, had become fluent. Naruto, in the original story, no. There's no original story. This is my story. And in my story, I don't get to be the hero who wins without blood. I get to be the survivor who chooses whose blood is spilled. And I chose Haku's blood over Sasuke's. Over Sakura's. Over mine. He didn't cry. He had trained himself not to cry. Tears were data leakage. They revealed emotion. They revealed weakness. But his hands shook. And that shaking told him something he didn't want to know. He wasn't becoming a ninja. He was becoming a weapon. A thinking weapon, but a weapon nonetheless. And weapons, no matter how well designed, eventually break. Kakashi, I watched the fight. Your planning was exceptional. Naruto, it was cruel. Kakashi, yes. It was. Naruto, you want to tell me that cruelty isn't the ninja way? That the will of fire is about protection, not calculation? Kakashi, no. I want to tell you that cruelty is sometimes necessary. But it should never become comfortable. If you get comfortable with hurting people, even for the right reasons, you stop being a protector. You become a tyrant with good intentions. Naruto, how do you know the difference? Kakashi, you don't. Not always. But you ask the question. You keep asking. The day you stop asking is the day you've lost. Naruto remembered that conversation for years. He asked himself, every time he planned a trap, every time he manipulated an enemy, every time he chose efficiency over mercy, is this protection? Or is this just fear dressed as strategy? He didn't always know the answer. But he never stopped asking. And that, perhaps, was what kept him human. Bonus scenes, the strategy of friendship . Sasuke came back different. Not softer. Not healed. But, present. He had spent 3 years learning that revenge was a destination with no arrival. That killing Itachi wouldn't bring his family back. That the truth, once known, couldn't be unknown. And he had learned that Naruto, the weakling he had dismissed, had been the only one who understood. Sasuke, why did you do it? All those years. The plans. The information. The escape routes. Why did you care so much about someone who treated you like dirt? Naruto, because you were the first person who saw me. Sasuke, I ignored you. I insulted you. Naruto, you saw me, Sasuke. Not the mask. Not the orange jumpsuit. Not the dead last. You looked at me, that first day in the academy, and you saw competition. You saw someone who might, someday, be worth fighting. No one else saw that. They saw a demon, or a joke, or nothing at all. But you saw potential. Even if you hated it. Even if you wanted to crush it. Sasuke was silent. He remembered that day. The first day. Naruto, sitting alone, eating a spoiled onigiri because the storekeeper had sold him expired food. Sasuke, walking past, not even looking. But he had looked. He had seen. And he had thought, for just a moment, that kid is angry. He's angry the way I am. Sasuke, I didn't want to see you. Because seeing you meant seeing myself. And I hated myself. Naruto, I know. That's why I kept trying. Not to save you. But to show you that self-hatred isn't the only option. That you can look at your weakness and decide to understand it, rather than destroy it. They sat in silence. The village below them, peaceful, unaware that two of its most damaged children had become its most unlikely guardians. Sasuke, Naruto. If I had gone to Orochimaru, if you hadn't given me that folder, would you have stopped me? Naruto, I couldn't have stopped you with force. You know that. Sasuke, so you would have let me go. Naruto, I would have followed you. Not to bring you back. Not to fight you. Just, to be there. To pick up the pieces when Orochimaru broke you. Because that's what friends do. Not rescue. Just, presence. Sasuke felt something crack in his chest. Not his heart. The wall around it. The wall he had built the night his family died. Sasuke, I don't deserve you. Naruto, probably not. But you got me anyway. That's how friendship works. No one deserves anyone. We just choose each other. And I choose you, Sasuke. Even when you're an ass. Even when you leave. Even when you break my heart. I choose you. Because you're my friend. And that's not a strategy. That's just truth. Sasuke cried. Not the dramatic tears of a tragic hero. Just quiet, exhausted tears. The tears of a boy who had finally found safe harbor after years of storm. And Naruto, who had planned for every disaster, had not planned for this. He had not planned for Sasuke's tears. He had not prepared a strategy for comforting his oldest enemy. So he just sat there. Close. Present. No mask. No plan. Just a boy, being a friend. It was the most important thing he ever did. Bonus scenes, the cost of survival . The war was won. The world was saved. And Naruto, the architect of that salvation, lay in a hospital bed, unable to move. His chakra network was damaged. Not from battle, but from overuse. Years of operating at the edge of his meager reserves, of pushing his body beyond its limits through sheer will, had taken a toll. The medics said he might never recover full function. That his chakra pathways were scarred, like a riverbed that had flooded too many times. Tsunade visited him. She looked old. Tired. Tsunade, you saved the world, Naruto. And you destroyed yourself doing it. Naruto, sounds about right. Tsunade, why didn't you tell anyone? Your chakra network was degrading for years. We could have helped. We could have. Naruto, if I told anyone, they would have pulled me back. They would have said rest. And resting means not preparing. And not preparing means, someone dies. Tsunade, you can't save everyone by destroying yourself. Naruto, I know. But I can save more by destroying myself than by saving myself. The math is simple, Hokage-sama. One life versus many. The answer is always many. Tsunade wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that his life mattered. That he deserved to live. That the world needed him not as a martyr, but as a man. But she looked at him, at this 20-year-old who had the eyes of someone who had lived 1,000 years, and she knew he wouldn't listen. Because he had never learned to value himself. He had only learned to value his utility. Tsunade, you're going to rest. Not because you deserve it. Not because you've earned it. But because I am ordering it. And I am still your Hokage. Naruto, Hokage-sama. Tsunade, and when you're better, you're going to learn something new. Something you never bothered to learn because you were too busy planning. Naruto, what? Tsunade, how to be happy. How to rest. How to want something for yourself, not for the village. Not for Sasuke. Not for peace. For you. She left. Naruto stared at the ceiling. Happy? What did that even mean? He had spent his whole life wanting to matter. Wanting to be useful. Wanting to survive. He had never stopped to ask what he wanted if survival was guaranteed. It was a terrifying question. Because he didn't know the answer. And not knowing was scarier than any enemy he had ever faced. Sakura, these are from the garden at the hospital. They grow wild. No one plants them. They just exist. Naruto, like me. Sakura, no, you idiot. Not like you. You weren't planted by anyone, but you grew anyway. That's different. These flowers didn't struggle. You did. Naruto, did I grow, Sakura? Or did I just survive? Sakura, there's a difference between surviving and thriving, Naruto. You've survived. Now it's time to thrive. To find out who you are when no one is attacking. When no one needs saving. When the only person who needs attention is you. Naruto looked at the flowers. Small. Yellow. Unremarkable. But they were alive. And they were beautiful, not because they had fought for it, but because they had simply grown. He wanted that. For the first time, he wanted something for himself. Naruto, Sakura. When I get out of here, will you help me? Not with medical stuff. With figuring out how to be a person. Not a tool. Not a weapon. Just a person. Sakura, of course, Naruto. Of course. Recovery took months. During that time, Naruto learned to rest. He learned to read for pleasure, not strategy. He learned to eat without calculating nutritional efficiency. He learned to walk without scanning for threats. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Harder than fighting pain. Harder than outthinking Madara. Harder than facing Kaguya. Because it required him to trust that the world wouldn't end if he stopped planning for its ending. And slowly, painfully, he began to believe it. Bonus scenes, the future that plans . The Hokage's office, when Naruto first inherited it, had been a war room. Maps on every wall. Weapons in every drawer. A place designed for conflict, because that was all the ninja world had known. Naruto changed it. Slowly. Carefully. The way he did everything. He added a window. He added plants that didn't need much care, because he was still bad at daily maintenance. He added pictures, of Team 7, of his wedding day, of his children, of Yuki the librarian, whose key he still wore around his neck. He made it a place where peace could exist. Where planning for war wasn't the only option. Genin, Hokage-sama. I'm not very strong. My chakra reserves are low. My taijutsu is bad. I failed the shuriken throw 3 times. Naruto, sit down. Naruto, this was my notebook when I was your age. Look at the first page. Genin, observation number 1, I am weak. But weakness is just information. It tells me what I can't do, so I can focus on what I can. Naruto, I wrote that when I was 8. I had just failed the clone technique for the first time. I was alone. I was scared. And I decided that if I couldn't be strong, I would be smart. If I couldn't be fast, I would be early. If I couldn't be powerful, I would be prepared. Genin, did it work? Naruto, sometimes. Not always. I lost people. I made mistakes. I hurt people I cared about because I thought strategy was more important than kindness. But I learned. Slowly. That preparation isn't just about traps and techniques. It's about preparing your heart. Preparing to care. Preparing to be hurt. Preparing to keep going even when the plan fails. He closed the notebook. Handed it to the genin. Naruto, take this. Add your own observations. And remember, the world will tell you that power is all that matters. And in a fight, they're right. Power wins fights. But life isn't a fight. Life is everything else. The conversations. The quiet moments. The people who choose to stand beside you even when you have nothing to offer. That's what preparation is really for. Not winning. But living. Genin, thank you, Hokage-sama. Naruto, don't thank me yet. I just gave you homework. The genin left, smiling. Naruto sat back in his chair. He looked at the window. At the sun. At the village he had helped build, not through power, but through persistence. His wife, Hinata, entered with tea. She didn't say anything. She just sat with him. That was her gift. She had never needed him to be strong. She had never needed him to be smart. She had just needed him to be there. And he was. Finally, fully, without masks or plans or strategies. Just there. Hinata, Naruto. The kids are asking for you. Naruto, tell them I'm coming. And Hinata? Hinata, yes. Naruto, thank you. For seeing me. Before anyone else did. Hinata, I always saw you. Even when you were hiding. They walked out together, hand in hand. The sun was setting. The village was peaceful. And somewhere, in a library that was still open late, a child was reading a forbidden scroll, preparing for a world that didn't know they existed. Naruto smiled. Because he knew that child. He was that child. And that child was going to change everything. So. What if Naruto never had Kurama? He would have been weak. He would have been bitter. He would have been forced to become intelligent instead of overpowering everyone. But he also would have been something else. Something that the original timeline, for all its power and spectacle, sometimes forgot to show. He would have been human. Fully, painfully, beautifully human. A boy who planned because he was afraid. Who prepared because he was alone. Who strategized because he didn't know how to ask for help. And through that planning, that preparation, that strategy, he learned to ask for help. He learned to trust. He learned that the strongest thing in the world isn't a tailed beast or a Rinnegan or a Susanoo. It's the willingness to keep trying. To keep caring. To keep planning for a better tomorrow, even when today is trying to kill you. That's the real what if. Not, what if he had no power? But, what if he had to find another way? And he did. He found it. Not in a demon. Not in a god. In himself. In the quiet, stubborn, unkillable part of himself that refused to be thrown away. That part exists in all of us. The part that says, I am weak. But I am still here. And as long as I am here, I can plan. I can prepare. I can hope. That's the lesson of Naruto Uzumaki, the weakest ninja in the world. Not that power doesn't matter. It does. But that power isn't the only path. And sometimes, the path of the mind, of the heart, of the stubborn refusal to quit. That's the path that changes the world. Thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for staying until the end. And remember, you don't need to be the strongest. You don't need to be the fastest. You don't need to be the smartest. You just need to be the one who doesn't give up. Because the world doesn't need more gods. It needs more people who care enough to think. And that is enough. Naruto, Final Observation. Number 10,312. Date, the day I became Hokage. Weather, clear. Mood, uncertain. The notebook had been with him for 20 years. It had survived the land of waves, the Chunin exams, the invasion, the war. It had been soaked in rain, stained with blood, burned at the edges during a fire jutsu incident he didn't want to remember. And now, on the first day of his tenure as Hokage, he wrote the last entry. Naruto, I spent my life preparing for enemies. For disasters. For the worst possible outcomes. I planned for pain, for Madara, for Kaguya. I planned for Sasuke's betrayal, for the village's destruction, for my own death. And I survived them all. Not because I was strong. But because I was ready. But today, I realized something. I never planned for this. For peace. For happiness. For a world where the worst thing that happens is paperwork and missed dinners. I don't know how to live in this world. I don't know how to stop planning for disaster and start planning for life. So this is my last observation. Not about enemies. Not about strategy. About myself. I am Uzumaki Naruto. I was weak. I was bitter. I was forced to become intelligent instead of overpowering everyone. And I would not trade that for anything. Because my weakness taught me empathy. My bitterness taught me patience. And my intelligence taught me that the world is not a battlefield. It's a garden. And gardens need tending, not conquering. So I will tend. I will plant. I will water. And when the storms come, as they always do, I will be ready. Not with traps and techniques. With community. With friendship. With the knowledge that I don't have to face the storm alone. This notebook is closed. But the story isn't over. It just has a new author. To whoever finds this, you are stronger than you think. Not because of what you can do. But because of what you're willing to learn. Keep learning. Keep planning. Keep caring. And never, ever let anyone tell you that weakness is the same thing as worthlessness. They are wrong. I am the proof. Naruto, thank you. For everything. The pen is set down. The window is opened. The sun streams in. And somewhere, in the infinite possibilities of the universe, a boy with no demon inside him smiles. Because he knows, with absolute certainty, that he doesn't need one. He never did.